Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the chair of this committee. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room. There's no one in the public gallery at the moment. And go down by the stairwells, don't use the lifts, and assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. And if you did sign in downstairs, please sign out for the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations. Regarding live web streaming, the meeting will be webcast to allow the public to watch remotely if they wish. Welcome to everyone who watches, because I know some people do. Please can I remind everyone speaking via microphone that they will be on camera, except those in the last two rows where there's no one sitting at the moment. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they don't wish to be recorded. And lastly, on the web streaming, please can everyone speaking use the microphones, and remember to switch them off when you have finished. Just a little bit about voting. I know lots of people in this room know this, but just for clarity, when voting, please can members of the committee keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. Okay, we'll now do some introductions around the room. I'm going to start with the councillors on the committee. So, as I said, I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm going to start this side this time.
Councillor Joe Standham, Paulsgrove Ward.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, member for Hilsing.
Good morning, Chair. So I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, and I help represent Nelson Ward, which is Stamshaw, Tipner, Buckland and North End area.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Chris Atwell.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward, and Vice Chair of this committee.
Mary Vallely for, gosh, I'm remembering, sorry.
Councillor Yinka Deniro, Charles Dickens Ward. Thank you.
Thank you to all the councillors for introducing yourself, and welcome to this meeting. I'm now going to ask anybody who is doing a deputation to introduce yourself. If you're just here for the enjoyment and entertainment, then you don't have to introduce yourself, but I'd like to get people introduced who are going to speak. So I'm going to go to the third row back and start with you, sir.
So I'm Richard Adair. I'm a councillor for Nelson Ward. I'm here today to make a deputation on 82 Drayton Road.
Welcome. Are you two making deputations? No. Okay, thank you. Welcome anyway. I'm going to go to the back row to the left.
Councillor Raymond Dent, Copner Ward, deputation on Burlington Road.
Welcome.
Councillor Peter Candlish here as the local councillor for Eastern Craneswater and also a local resident close to the matter I'm going to speak on.
Welcome.
Yeah, hi, I'm Denise Perry. I'm a South Sea resident and I'm speaking on the seafront issue. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm Eleanor Morgan, here to represent South Sea Sound in regards to 114 Waverley Road development.
Welcome.
Councillor Steve Pitt, leader of the council, supporting Eleanor Morgan on with objecting to the 114 Waverley Road application.
Welcome.
Chris Broyd, managing agent of the freehold and deputation for 114 Waverley Road.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chair. I'm John McDermott. I'm the Chief Exec of Town Planning Expert. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant for the former Debenhams South Sea.
Welcome to the meeting. Is there anyone else doing a deputation who has not introduced themselves? Okay. So now I'm going to ask the council officers to introduce themselves with their role, please. I'll start this side, because I always forget you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Juliet Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor.
Morning, my name's Simon Turner. I'm a team leader in the planning department.
Morning, Chair. Edward Chapman-Selton, team leader in the planning department, here for the seafront application. Thank you. Morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
And Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
Excellent. Welcome everyone to the committee. Is there anyone who is going to be speaking who hasn't introduced themselves? No, that's great. Thank you. So the next thing is just a bit of a clarification about proceedings. Again, a lot of you will know this, but each agenda item will be presented in the following order. First of all, the officers will give a presentation on the application. Secondly, there will be any deputations made. And thirdly, we will go on to members of the committee asking questions. Then we will go on to members of the committee making comments, and then there'll be proposals, and a planning decision or vote will happen at the end. Okay. Next agenda item is apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Dyke, so please can we note those? Members, any declarations of interest on any of these items today? No, thank you. The minutes of the last meeting, which was beautifully brief, compared with a lot of the meetings. For people who were there, I've read through them. I think that they're accurate. I'm looking to my vice chair, who usually reads them too. Are we all agreed, for those people here, that they are accurate record of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, just before we start, I've had some requests to change the order slightly of the items of the agenda, and I'm hoping that members will agree with me on this. We've tried to be as fair as possible about who's doing a deputation and needs to go, and we kind of took it in the order that the requests came in. So we're going to start with item 6, which is 114 Waverley Road. We're then going to go to item 4, the construction site at former Debenhams. Then we'll go in order, so Southsea Seafront, item 5, and then from 7 onwards, I think that's the way, I think I've got it right there, and we'll go in order of the meeting. So are members happy to do that? Yes, thank you very much indeed. Okay. Well, we will then come on to the first application that we're going to be dealing with, and that's item 6, which is 114 Waverley Road. And I will go to, I think it's Simon who is presenting. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. So we have an application at 114 Waverley Road for the conversion of the building to form 2 flats with external alterations, including the raising of the roof height of the building, construction of a dormer window to the rear roof slope, and the demolition and reconstruction of the rear elevation to separate the building from the adjoining rear terrace.
Sorry, can I just stop you there quickly, because one of the members of the committee has indicated...
I don't think you've asked for declarations of interest.
I did. Yeah,
did you? I'm so sorry. I was trying to turn my phone off and couldn't do it. I just wanted to say that, as with many people in this area, I have known not that well the objector, Eleanor Morgan, because she was at Priory School with my daughter, and so I have discussed it with the lawyer, and there's no personal or financial interest at all in that. It's difficult when you've lived in a place for 40 years and your children have been to local school. There are quite a lot of people that you have known for a bit in an acquaintance sort of way across the years. And I just wanted to make it clear that I've discussed it with the lawyer.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, and that has been noted. Apologies, Simon.
Thank you. I'll just read that again. Conversion of the building to form 2 flats, external alterations including raising the roof height, the construction of a dormer to the rear roof slope, and the demolition and then a reconstruction of the rear elevation to separate the building from the adjoining rear terrace. I think, if you don't mind, Chair, I'll do the supplementary matters straight away to make sure I don't forget them later. So turning to the supplementary matters report, the SMAT just outlined that 3 conditions, numbers 7, 8 and 10, that concern glazing, mechanical ventilation and the front elevation would benefit from a tightening up of the wording. So inclusion of a clearer timeline deadline for the completion of the specific works, i.e. prior to occupation. So just a minor tightening up of those three conditions. And then secondly, we would like to propose an additional condition to ensure appropriate and matching materials for the new roof and the elements of brick build-up and for the rear dormer. So an additional condition there. Thank you. Moving on to the proposal. We are at just behind the middle point of Albert Road, effectively. So that's Albert Road running east to west along the top of the site. I'll just get the cursor going. There you go. And this is the junction with Waverley Road running south towards the sea and Lawrence Road running north.
Beg your pardon, Chair. Is there any chance of turning that row off, just so it doesn't look so misty? Is that all right, anyone? We have done it before, as you get a better look at the screen. Sorry.
It's okay, it's important that we see it.
I think they're over there somewhere. Well, one went off.
One of the previous ones on that road.
I think it was the second to last one. Third to last, maybe.
Go, keep going back.
No much difference, really, is it?
Is that a bit better?
Well,
Oh well, we'll leave it like that if it's marginally better. Apologies again. Third time lucky. Right. Is everyone comfortable?
So here we are on Waverley Road, near the junction with Albert Road. The Wedgwood Rooms, just to place you, if you need it, just off to the northeast there, and the King's Theatre, 200 or 300 metres off to the west. So we're on Waverley Road at that junction. Please note the adjoining of the application site to the building to the rear, which is South Sea Sound. Ms Morgan is speaking on that shortly. There's the street front, so the building's on Albert Road, back onto the property. That door is to the Albert Road property, which is a shop. The building itself is occupied by, as it happens, by sort of studio workshop type places, but is in Class E use, which is a wide commercial town centre type use class. And then down the side, we have, on the next slide, a driveway that goes through to some properties at the rear. I think there might be a couple of residential properties down the back there. And South Sea Sound is the adjoining property, along with another couple of neighbours. There's a first floor flat above the Albert Road property, and this is in residential use as well. So while we're looking at the property, the signage on the front would come off, and that's condition 10 for the making good of the area underneath, and then some relatively limited changes to fenestration and so on. The building would generally be tidied up, if I can put it that way, on the front, with a conversion, and the two front doors would remain, a front door to each of the flats. You'll see that in a moment. Some new windows put on the side elevation, and then a raised roof in order to get another story in, with a ridge rising by 80 centimetres from recollection, and a rear dormer put on the back. So here's the front of the property. You can see the two doors you've seen on the front photograph. As it happens, it leads into one unit there on the ground floor, and then upstairs into a fairly fluid, I believe, open spaces occupied by different occupiers with some degree of vacancy at the moment. The building will be substantially rebuilt sort of internally and towards the rear. So the proposed plans are to convert the building into 2 flats. So if we start with the ground floor, both will be across 2 floors. So you would come into an open kitchen living room with some stairs taking you up to a first floor hallway, a second bedroom, a main bedroom, and a bathroom. Otherwise, the upper flat would come in through these doors, proceed up the stairs, a couple of flights of stairs, and come into their front door, into their open plan living room, the bathroom in the corner, bedroom, and internal stairs up to their further large bedroom and what's labelled as a dressing room and an ensuite there. In terms of communal facilities in this hallway area, we've got bin storage. That did start, I believe, on the alleyway, I think tucked into the side elevation. That's been taken out and put into this communal space to keep the driveway clear next door, and some bike stores for the 2 flats. The flats meet all the national standards in terms of size, and we're happy with their disposition, layout, and outlook and light. Importantly, presently, I'll just go back one stop. It doesn't show it too well, but where it says ground floor is actually the adjoining South Sea studio, recording studio, and there is a not very thick wall, if it's drawn correctly, a party wall, an adjoining wall between the 2 properties. And that has been a key issue throughout the application, how to deal with this juxtaposition of a recording studio that can create noise itself, but also needs quiet as well, depending on what work is being carried out at the time. And that's one reason why the application has taken a long time to come forward to committee. The solution now arrived at is not only to insulate the building, but actually to detach it. So as described earlier on, the rear of the building will be taken away from the South Sea Sound building, the recording studio, so it will be isolated and separated from that building to avoid the transmission of noise either way, thereby affecting adversely either party. And then not only would it be separated, then the new flats would also be insulated to a high degree, noise insulation. I've got the specifications if you want to hear them later. A high degree of noise insulation as well to also deal with that matter. From the street, the windows would be noise insulated to deal with traffic noise. We have a suite of conditions to deal with the noise matters. Acoustic report that is set out what the noise measurements are, what they're calculated to be, if this is consented, and how they'll be carried out. And so we have those conditions promoted by the Environmental Health Officer to make sure everything is dealt with properly and the predicted readings actually come to fruition. There's the existing elevations. You've seen the photograph of the property, and so you can see it's dotted on the extra area, 800 millimetres extra, I think it was, to the ridge, so not terribly noticeable from the street front, albeit with some roof lights. And there is a rear dormer along the back, there, top right, to provide that extra living accommodation in the extra storey in the roof. There are simply some more photos and so on. So really that's a canter through the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Hunt, you have your mic on.
I'm very sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we're now going to go to deputations. What I didn't say before is the order of the deputations, just in case people were interested or needed reminding. And the order of them is objectors, supporters, the applicant, and then any councillors. So on this item, we have Miss Eleanor Morgan. You have up to 6 minutes to speak.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Eleanor Morgan and I'm the owner and manager of South Sea Sound, a professional recording studio and rehearsal space directly behind 114 Waverley Road. We've been here almost 10 years. Our much-loved studio is the result of significant private and public investment. We work every day with local musicians and national clients, including BBC, Netflix and MTV. Our work supports Portsmouth's creative economy and the city's cultural ecosystem. Standing here days before our 10th birthday, having survived Brexit, COVID and ongoing austerity demonstrates how vulnerable small businesses remain, even so more in the music sector. Every time one of these flats is sold, our problems could begin again should planned soundproofing measures prove inadequate. I want to be clear from the start that this isn't NIMBYism. We support the delivery of new housing, but I'm concerned it is impossible to practically deliver without causing irreparable harm to our business, due to noise during, after being impossible to appropriately manage. We are asking for simple and reasonable conditions. We seek safety for our customers, I'll explain that in a moment, a clear line of communication with the developer, mediation to secure effective protections from negative financial impact so that our business can survive, and assurances that we will be allowed to continue our standard operations without complaint following development. Our studio operates 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m, but professional recording usually happens between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Any noise or vibration during these core hours makes professional recording impossible. Unexpected, uncontrolled construction could force us to cancel sessions, breach contracts and lose long-standing clients. Potential loss of turnover is £350 per day of noise when a session was booked, and that excludes reimbursing clients for travel or missed deadlines, solicitor and professional fees if we must enforce our rights, or additional costs to recover lost clients. Loss of reputation obviously poses a risk to any business ability to remain solvent. Southsea Sound is a highly noise-sensitive business. Even minimal airborne noise or vibration may be imperceptible to the human ear but will be picked up by microphones, making professional recording impossible. Because of this, I ask if construction practically can be managed to avoid damaging our business. We therefore ask the committee to ensure that enforceable measures are in place before any works begin. We would request, and I'm aware some of these have been covered, construction noise and vibration management plan, objective thresholds for vibration and noise with clear criteria for works and when they must be paused, adjusted or mitigated for, and an effective pathway for implementation, advance notice of disruptive works, mitigation measures. I would also ask how damage to our walls during separation would be managed and how the removal of mass affecting our existing soundproofing and its impact on neighbours would be managed. Not mentioned in conditions is mediation. In the event of disputes or breaches of threshold, a pre-agreed independent mediator should be engaged to resolve issues promptly and fairly. Financial responsibility, the developer to cover any fully evidenced direct losses caused by disruption, including cancelled sessions, client risk reimbursement, and reasonable professional fees if enforcement or remediation is required. Looking beyond construction, we would need clear protections once the flats are occupied. Southsea Sound is a lawful established business, and the proposed second floor bedroom directly adjoins our control room. Typically, residential noise sensitivity in the evening would place immediate pressure on our lawful operating hours, despite our established prior use. This is exactly why the agent of change principle exists. Any further complaints arising from normal operation should not penalise us or the bar we share a garden with. Finally, while access is no longer a headline objection, we do ask for a simple condition: no scaffolding, storage or obstruction on the shared alleyway, which is Southsea Sound's only fire egress and only access to our front door and the only access to multiple other properties and businesses. Southsea Spirit, who we share a garden with, is a separate business, only open on certain days of the week, meaning we cannot rely on that as a fire exit. In conclusion, this application asks the committee to accept significant unresolved risks to our business. Whether it's practically possible to deliver this project without direct disruption to my business is a question. In theory, it may appear deliverable, but in practice, is it possible? If not, I would request this is rejected. We are asking for consideration if this is practically possible. Housing delivery is important, but small specialist businesses like ours, once lost, are not easily replaced. Currently working together with Portsmouth Creates and other cultural organisations within the city towards the UK City of Culture 2029 bid. For our business to see that date and help the city realise that goal, we need protection that allows us to continue operating successfully, continue contributing to the city's creative economy, and survive the construction period without unsustainable financial loss. Thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you for your deputation, Eleanor. Okay, the next deputation is from Christopher Broyd, who's supporting the application. You have up to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, officers. There's been some change since the application has reached the committee. In fact, the top floor has handed notice. I have the copies of the notice here, should they require. And the ground floor, as was pointed out, the officer is actually vacating in March, which means we only have one floor, and that is even alongside all the advertising that's been done to find further tenants for the property. I welcome the intense report by the officer and his conclusions. And also the highways teams, they're satisfied no material change, the parking survey, no severe impact. Environmental, no objection, originally did have, but the alterations to the design and the change to the noise assessor's report, removing the vibration concerns, has no objection. We have contaminated land, no objection, natural ingot, no objection. Moving on, all objections that have been received have been covered in relation to the design of the building and the new proposal. But whilst I agree with paragraph 49 of the 2024 MPPF brought to your attention by the officer, I'd also like to refer to paragraph 51, where it states the refusal of planning permissions on grounds of prematurity will seldom be justified, where a draft plan has yet to be submitted for examination, or in the case of neighbourhood plan before the end of local planning authority or publicity periods on the draft plan. The officer has also, with 7.3 of his report, advised limited weight should be applied to PRP 26, and I do welcome this. Moving on to the character and appearance in 8.12, the officer states that proposal alterations are appropriate and in accordance with PCS 23, PCS 17, PRP 17, 47, etc. Now, I have limited time to continue with my thoughts on the report, but what isn't mentioned is the shortfall of dwellings in Portsmouth under the expectations of the National Planning Policy Framework. The Policy Framework 2024 states that delivering a sufficient supply of homes within paragraph 61 to support the government's objective of significantly boosting the supply of homes, it is important that that sufficient amount and variety of land to come forward where it is needed. And when maintaining a supply and delivery, paragraph 78 states that strategic policies should be in place, to include trajectory illustrating the expected rate of housing delivery over a planned period. In your own housing delivery test of 2023 to 2024 and demonstrated within Table 1 of the housing provisions, it fell short on a yearly, including 22-23, where there should have been 856 homes were required to be built, where only 9 were supplied. And in the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan of 23-24, stated in 2.2.3, to put the results in context across the Partnership for South Hampshire sub-region for local planning authorities, Fareham, Gosport, Havant and Portsmouth, saw the housing delivery fall below 75%, as seen in Table 2. Also goes on to further explanations from there. But I feel I've shone enough light on the publicly available data into why this application should be approved. And today, delayed by, if not delayed only by the appeal to the National Inspectorate. Now, turning over. It is clear that there's a need for homes within your region, desperately required, and with all the empty commercial units within a 150-metre radius highlighted by the officer within this report, it will be a windfall to you. So with the aforementioned data available to you and the recommendations and support noted above, I would find a refusal of this application to be unreasonable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christopher, for your deputation. The last deputation on this item is from Councillor Steve Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. Before I actually go into the deputation itself, I do want to make reference to the relevance here of the current occupation of the existing building. It's been well known for some time that there was an application in process for a residential conversion. If you're operating a business in a building where you know that the landlord is applying to change it into residential accommodation, why would you stay? You would seek alternative accommodation. They say that they're marketing the building for commercial use, while everyone knows that there's an application for residential conversion. So I don't think that should actually carry as much weight as the applicant is actually implying that it should. Everybody knows they want to convert the building into housing. I would like to acknowledge the significant improvements to the application that have been made by officers during the process. The original application as put was awful. The thing that I would like to take you back to, though, is that first application. it made virtually no consideration whatsoever of the implications of this on Southsea Sound. The things that were being put forward within it were minimal, and from there to where it's got to now, we have seen a big difference. But that's important, because it told me that the applicant wasn't actually that fussed, and it's only the officers in their interactions that have pushed the applicant in order to do better with the mitigation required. But when it comes to the practical delivery of the application, that should tell you something about the considerations that that applicant may actually make in practice. And practicality is something I want to focus on. I understand that the officers have to operate in making their recommendations within the constraints of the MPPF. So what we have in front of us is a technical officer's report that says that technically the proposal can be supported. But I ask you members to consider whether or not in practice this project can be delivered without the disruption to Southsea Sound that Ms Morgan thinks it will have. And I allege that it will not. The practical process of doing a development means that people are on timescales, delivery dates, meeting budgets. Every week I get complaints from people where planning conditions are being breached because of the practical nature of delivering a project. I see it in my own ward. It is very common, and the ability of the local planning authority and building control to intervene promptly enough to stop disruption of business when you've got people booked in that day when the noise is actually happening are very limited. So the local planning authority will react, but will it react in time to save potentially huge damage to Ms Morgan's business? I say that it won't. I don't believe that the access rights for the shared alleyway are properly addressed, including fire exits, in the conditions as currently put. But I do want to draw your attention to something that's not in the officer's report, and that's paragraph 4 on page 77, not of your report, but of the new MPPF that is currently out for consultation. So whilst that can't carry considerable weight, it can carry some weight, and it is not referenced in the report, and it reads as follows. Existing businesses, community facilities, public services, defence and security activities should not have unreasonable restrictions placed upon their current or permitted operation as a result of development being approved after they were established. This means that development proposals should be capable of being integrated effectively with existing business, community and public service activities and infrastructure in their facility, including but not limited to such uses as pubs, music venues, places of worship, etc. There's nothing like that in the MPPF at the moment, but that's a clear indication from the government of the direction of travel of the new MPPF rules. Making this application acceptable at this point could be premature. In just months, we could see the tightening of the MPPF, which would limit the ability to approve such an application as this. I think everyone knows that as presented, once built, there is every possibility that it could operate without affecting the quiet enjoyment of their business premises for Southsea Sound. I'm alleging to you members that bearing in mind that new paragraph in the MPPF, in addition to the other limited weight within the officer's report, it is not possible to actually do the construction project without the interruption of that business, and that additional weight should be given in your considerations. Finally, I would draw your attention to what was not mentioned specifically by Simon, and that's the lack of fresh air for the people who will actually be living in these flats. It's mechanical ventilation. Are we really moving to a world where people can't have fresh air into their properties? Would you want to live in a residential accommodation where you couldn't breathe fresh air and open a window? I just think it's really poor. So specifically around the inability of the officers to have conditioned the requirement for mediation or the requirement for compensation, they are the two elephants in the room. This project, during its delivery, will interrupt the business of Southsea Sound, and it will require mediation which cannot be conditioned, and inevitably it would require some form of compensation that will not be available. And on that basis, I ask you to refuse the application.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, that brings us to the end of the deputations. So can I remind members that the first thing we need to do is ask questions. So are there any questions from members?
Chair, is it possible we could just offer a little bit of clarity coming out of the deputations that hopefully will help? In Councillor Pitt's deputation, he's referred to the emerging MPPF and the comments about the agent of change. Just to clarify, that's already in the MPPF, so that's paragraph 200. If you look at 8.21 of the report, basically the same wording is in the emerging draft as is already in the current MPPF. So we couldn't attach weight to a consultation on the MPPF, but it's already in the guidance anyway, so you can take that into account.
Thank you for that information. Questions? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I want to ask about, if I may, I was under the impression that we like to encourage the creative industries in our shopping centres. Is there a policy that covers that in this location, David?
Is that with respect to the current building or next door or both?
Next door. I mean, I would talk about an adverse impact on the property and driving away creative. Do we have a policy on creative industries as anchors and so on?
I'd have to check through. I think we do have those sorts of policy areas, but in more broader terms, in any event, we would seek to protect businesses as well, which is also touched on in the report.
Any other questions? I think you both went at the same time. Councillor Mason, I'll come to you.
Yeah, well, my first one follows up a point which Councillor Pitt made in his deputation, which is the fact that there are no opening windows. Is there any reason, what is the reason why there are no opening windows on the Waverley Road frontage of the building, where it would appear that this would not have any effect on the neighbours, or on the alleyway side of the building? Why is there no opening windows to get fresh air?
Thank you, Councillor. The principal noise is the road noise affecting the site, and that affects the front elevation principally, as you can imagine. So my understanding of the noise report is it's the front windows that are non-opening, which is a common occurrence on residential development on the front, indeed back of pavement, on any road of any frequency of travel like this one. And you get that across this city and other cities, and that's why you have a mechanical ventilation. It can also be to do with air pollution as well. So the mechanical ventilation means you don't need to open, or indeed you can't open your window to protect you from the noise, and this glazing specification is higher as well. But in order to get ventilation, to avoid overheating and get some exchange of air, the mechanical system installed in the flat, in the building, provides that movement of air. So that is why it has to go in. As it happens, it's only the front windows, as my understanding, that are affected sufficiently from the noise readings taken at the application site from traffic. And so some of the side windows don't have to be kept shut. I can point out some of them to you. So on the first floor, the bedroom window there on the side, the bedroom window of the side of that bedroom, ditto on the second floor, a couple of windows there and there. So it's going to be a combination of shut windows and openable windows and the mechanical ventilation.
Councillor Stander.
Can I follow this up?
Sorry, Councillor.
We've been talking about noise. What is the noise level of ventilation for this building?
I don't have figures in front of me, but it obviously has to be part of the design is that clearly you can't have a hugely whirring fan or extractor in your bedroom while you're trying to sleep. So I do believe that they are, as I say, they go into flats typically up and down the country in Portsmouth on the roads. So they'll always have a very muted noise output, precisely so that you can get to sleep at night without this thing bothering you.
Have you finished your questions, Councillor Mason? Yeah? Councillor Standen.
It's okay. Apologies. It was having a look at the floor plans again. I've cleared up my question anyway, so it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if Simon could just go through condition 11 for us, because it seems as though that would benefit some of the concerns being laid out.
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat that?
I was wondering if you could just take us through condition 11, please, Simon, because I believe that it sort of addresses some of the issues that have been mentioned so far.
Thank you, Councillor. And if I may, I'll take you through all the relevant conditions. So condition 7 is the glazing criterion, and we've just touched on that. That's principally for the road noise from the street front. Condition 8 is the mechanical ventilation that's linked to the windows. We just talked about that. But 9 and 11 are the two key ones with respect to Southsea Sound, the recording studio to the rear. So number 9 refers back to the environmental noise impact assessment that the application has submitted and has been updated as the application has been amended and improved. So that sets out the noise specifications, the noise readings taken at the site, and the noise specifications predicted once the insulation measures I've taken you through, the isolation of the building from the building it's currently attached to, the physical isolation, and then the insulation put into that building. Those are all calculations in the noise report. So this noise report, the development, if approved, needs to be carried out in conjunction or in compliance with that noise report, that level of sound attenuation, etc. And then 9B, prior to occupation, we're not just saying we want you to carry it out, we need you to prove it's been carried out. So prior to the occupation of the development hereby permitted, an as-built acoustic assessment evidencing that all the rooms which adjoin or close to Southsea Sound achieve a minimum standard of, as set out, during the active use of the adjoining recording studio. So it's not just asking them to do something and hoping they do it properly and it works, it's requiring evidence that it does. So that's the completed development demonstrating, or if it doesn't demonstrate it, they can't occupy it until they've adjusted and demonstrated that they have provided the long-term isolation and insulation from the recording studio. Condition 11 is the construction period before that, which is also a key concern of the recording studio, understandably. And we have some significant sympathy for their concern about their business. This condition has been required by Environmental Services, who are acoustic specialists, and principally has been brought up because of the amended plans which, prior to a few months ago, show the removal of the building from Southsea Studio, the Southsea Studio. At the moment it's adjoining, that will be cut off and rebuilt 60 centimetres away. That construction period is probably the noisiest bit, that first bit of the construction. Physically, so if you think of a wall, the back wall of Southsea Sound and the adjoining walls coming into it, internal and external, they'll need to be cut off, I imagine, circular saws type arrangements, and then removed 600 mil back and reconstructed on a new foundation. So it's the removal, as I think was alluded to earlier by the Deputy, the removal of the building and then the digging of a new foundation that will be the most noisy activities next door to the sound studio. So that is why that condition has unusually been put on. We wouldn't normally have this, but because it's such an adjacent relationship to a sensitive user. So here, I'll read it out. Prior to the commencement of construction, an assessment shall be undertaken. This is further work of works likely to cause a significant disturbance in relation to noise and vibration using the British standard. That needs to be submitted to the local authority for approval. Upon approval, those measures shall be implemented to mitigate any observed adverse effect levels. So there's more work to be done, and that submission will need to be sufficiently detailed on those most noisy works, the noisiest works, and run through the environmental officer again for their approval or refusal until they get it to sufficient standard. I'm not saying there won't be bumps along the road and some difficulties, of course, as you get with any construction site next to whatever neighbours typically. But this is the maximum control we're able to offer and a degree of mitigation that is really, really important.
Thank you, Simon.
Councillor Hunt.
Councillor Valalelli has not gone before me, so go next.
Beg your pardon. Councillor Valley.
How long will this process take of construction? I may have missed this. You know, how long is it going to take?
I don't think we've been provided with an estimate. We all know some things can take longer than expected. I'm sure it would be weeks and weeks, I would imagine.
I expect it'll be months. And I seriously wonder why we're not compensating the sound studio, you know? It's shocking.
I'm guessing that will be a planning answer. Like,
Well, yeah. So the two requests about mediation and compensation are outside of the planning system. We have planning control that's been touched on by Councillor Pitt, indeed, about non-compliance with conditions, and we have the full weight of the planning law to deal with that, if necessary. I hope it won't be necessary if this is consented. And the common rule, common law, Control of Pollution Act, Environmental Protection Act, those sorts of things as well. Just like any construction site, especially when you're cheek by jowl, working with the neighbour is obviously important, and we hope that will happen if this is granted planning consent. On things like the scaffolding as well that's been asked about, not surprisingly, people down the driveway there don't want it blocked off. To answer the question that was raised, the Planning Authority can't control that either. That's a matter between the parties that have rights of access and whatever the rules are in those covenants and rights and documents that control what can or can't happen. I'd just like to add, if it's of any help, the construction period would be difficult, and it needs to be properly controlled, and would be a challenge. Don't dispute that. But longer term, if this goes ahead, I think it may be it's a settled position longer term, because the building at the moment is an open Class E commercial use without planning control in terms of previous conditions on hours of use. So currently it's got these studio type, workshop type uses, but within the wider Class E use class, you've got retail, you've got restaurants, you've got cafes, you could have a gym in there with the loud music, uncontrolled hours, day nursery, medical facility, all sorts of other business uses. Or any occupier of that building in any case, should they want to change things inside, like you can in your own house if it's not listed. You can knock walls through, build things and so on. So there's always the worry, I imagine, that may exist of what could happen in that building in the future with other changes of use. It's not a change of use, sorry, that requires development. So if this is consented, and once you pass through that, the worst bit of the construction phase, which we seek to manage, the building then will be, I think, a good, a reliable neighbour in that it's taken away, it's physically separated from the studio, and highly insulated. So if that's any compensation, I think for the long term, if this is granted planning consent, this may be a better option in the end.
I have a question about the agent of change principle. And forgive me for if I should have done more homework on the NPPF. But are there any cases to demonstrate, or is there any more detail about it in the context of the types of businesses that are involved? So I get the principle of it, that there's a change of use, and you have to weigh up: does this disadvantage an established house or business versus what you will gain from it? But the context for me is really important. It's the type of business. So if it, for example, it was the new dress shop, it would be really annoying, but it would be a different, for me there would be a different weighting in the agent of change. Do you get where I'm going? Is there any nuance that is either written into the NPPF, or are there any cases that you could use to demonstrate how that is taken into account?
The NPPF has to be very general because it can't try and predict, millions of different permutations and circumstances. And it's appeared in the NPF in more recent years because of problems in the past where you've not quite the same situation as this, because this is a bit different. The recording studio needs silence itself, but also produces its own noise, I believe, depending on what's going on. It's a slightly different use. The typical problem that has emerged in the past, hence the control now that didn't always exist, was, say, flats being built above a nightclub. The flats go in, the neighbours start to complain, the nightclub has to close down because of environmental laws. So there's lots of case law and problems in the planning world that have cropped up over the years, which has brought forward the appearance, whenever it did appear, in national guidance about how to properly manage that and the principle of the agent of change. So we've got a particular circumstance in this case, slightly different, as I said, to what the more normal expected versions, but and we have a bespoke set of conditions to deal with this particular circumstance.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Smythe.
I'd like to ask a few questions about the mechanical ventilation with heat recovery system. I'm a great believer in passive house and new buildings, when they're constructed from the outset with the right balance between insulation of sound and heat, are designed very well in order to balance the incoming air and the air coming out. This is an old building, which, however technical the windows are, to which is being added a mechanical ventilation and heat recovery system. Now, I appreciate that the strength of that system may not be as great as it would be in a restaurant, where you get very noisy air extractors putting out smelly air. But I can't believe that this can be done without some sound coming from that mechanical ventilation system. And second of all, I find it difficult to understand how you can have a mechanical ventilation system with any opening windows at all. I mean, it then becomes very expensive for the individual and so forth. Can I have a bit more explanation about the technology behind that, as described in paragraph, the recommended conditions on paragraph 8? I think I still, well, I can come on to my opinions on that later, but I'd like a bit more technical reassurance that because opening the side windows is going to be the place where you would be able to hear noise, perhaps excessive noise in your bedroom when there's events happening in South Sea Sound. I don't understand the logic of that paragraph, the condition 8, nor of what's said in the earlier in the report.
Thank you. I don't have technical knowledge of this matter. It's an environmental services matter, and I don't have much professional experience of it either. I mean, that's partly the reason for the condition, is to make sure it is understood how any openable windows would interact with the closed windows, or would they actually all have to be shut. That will be worked out with the full details we're requiring. Those details would, if approved, go through to the condition, will go through to the environmental officer, who will be able to comment on the adequacy of that system. That's the second half of your answer, I think, question. The first half, again, noise. Yes, you're right. It's not like ventilation for a restaurant or something where air is expelled at high velocity to get the smells away from nearest residents. This is a low trickle type extraction and ventilation system, specifically designed for residential use. So I can't give you an acoustic rating or anything like that, but it has to be something that you can sleep at night with, or indeed not be bothered while you're watching TV or reading a book. So I think, although I don't have technical knowledge, I think I can assure members that there wouldn't be a disturbance to the occupiers of the flats if approved.
Chair, I was more talking about the ingress of noise from South Sea Sound that could make it difficult to deal with opening any windows there.
Yeah, South Sea Sound is well insulated itself for the very reasons we've discussed before. It doesn't want to disturb its neighbours when it's making more noise, and when it's in a quieter recording, it doesn't want noise coming in. So it's already well insulated, I understand, itself to some degree. I'm not sure that there's going to be a particular impact on the occupiers once the building is separated and insulated. But again, the details of the ventilation and whether windows are actually openable or not, that will be dealt with as part of that condition with further details.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, members? Councillor Mason.
We've heard a lot in the questioning about noise and about the noise in construction. What locus do the planners have, does the planning authority have, to ensure that there will not be a disruption of a level which will have a serious financial impact upon the neighbouring studios?
Well, so the construction condition is number 11, and that's asking for the most particularly noisy matters to be showed. So an assessment must be submitted of the works which are most likely to cause significant disturbance. I've talked about those, removing the buildings and putting in a foundation, excavating and putting that in. Those seem to me to be the most the noisiest things. And you're asking how can we control that? Well, it would be, for example, the method of removing the buildings. Are you knocking bricks around? Are you sawing them? It's those sorts of details that we need to understand what the noise levels are, how can they be mitigated. Those are the things that need to be understood and that we will take through to environmental services to comment upon and degree of management that we can exercise. We can't exercise total management of something like this, but of the noisiest activities we seek to have some degree of control.
Any other questions? Councillor Hunt.
So you covered quite a bit of what I was going to ask, not least what could go into the property if it wasn't successful in obtaining this planning permission or something like it. So it could range from anything, I think you said, from a restaurant, presumably with all the rumblings from a restaurant, and what about, you know, something like a forge or things like that? What control, what sort of, I mean, a creative industry could go in there, for example, could it not, that was noisy, you know, doing metal work and that sort of thing. Is that correct?
It's not always easy to categorise what use class a particular use falls into. We get this every day. A shop is a shop, that's fine, that's Class E. A day nursery is Class EF, etc. But as you're getting to a more industrial, you mentioned a forge, for example, something more industrial is less likely to fall into Class E, in which case a planning permission will be required, and that will be assessed on its own merits, again, with respect to noise in this instance. But there are a wide range of Class C uses, as I listed earlier, that could go in there without needing planning permission and without any control over their hours.
So what really is concerning me is the vibration through the ground. I mean, it's a recording studio next door. I mean, they're very sensitive things. We really have no idea how long it would take. And do we know, for example, whether that work, do we know the hours of work of the studio next door? For example, do they work on Sundays or do they work into the evenings? I imagine that they do because of the nature of their business. Do we know those things at all? I mean, for example, would it be possible to put a condition on that they only do the groundworks, for example, on a day when the studio was shut and not working, unless it's 24/7?
That level of detail is extremely difficult for a planning authority to get into, so it wouldn't normally do that, almost ever, I would say. The deputy has set out, the studio operates 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Professional recording usually happens between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Construction work usually happens Monday to Friday, 8 in the morning, something like that, to about 4 o'clock, perhaps a Saturday morning. The environmental regulations set out what expected construction hours are. So I think it's probably more a matter, and I'm not saying this lightly for the recording studio, but trying to plan around the likely construction times, which are daytimes during the week. It does make it more difficult for the recording studio to adjust at that particular time of most disturbance. But again, that's where you get into cooperation goes a long way, if that can be achieved.
Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got a building here with the windows at the front not being able to open. If there was a fire in the stairwell, I wonder, is the window on the side of the building large enough for people to escape from?
For fire safety, they'll have to meet building regulations. That we wouldn't have any expertise or involvement with that.
Councillor Hunt.
So before we leave this, and to move my mind a bit further on, so if, for example, there was a mind to do this, may I ask, so this is very close, it's literally the width of the pavement, the living area, it's the width of the pavement to the road. What can we do to consider the impact on the intended residential occupiers from vibration, noise, and all the other things associated with that really ever so busy junction? I know there are some other houses around, but there are flats, but they are above the shops and not on the ground, apart from Waverley across the road, the flats there. But this is right on the ground. So will there be rumblings as the cars and buses and lorries and goodness knows what else goes by? It's a really busy old junction there. Have we considered that? Has the report considered that?
I don't believe so. I think it's just like all the other properties on all the other roads, that roads of similar amount of traffic. Yes, it's on the back of pavement, it's by the junction, but I think a lot of the houses along there, some have front gardens of a greater or lesser extent, some are on back of pavement. So it's a fact of living in the urban area. I think you get a bit of a rumble from a bigger vehicle from time to time, but that's the choice you make in living in the urban environment.
Final opportunity for questions. Okay, we'll now go to comments and proposals. Councillor Hunt has got his hand straight up, and then Councillor Atwell.
All right.
And then Councillor.
So look, I'm really grateful to the planning officers. It's absolutely clear from the answers we've been getting and from the report that they have looked at this really closely, and that they've tried very hard. They've covered everything, all the bases, not to look up themselves, but because they are interested in this. They clearly know that the studio next door is very important to the economy of the city, part of the economy, part of the creative industries. I feel like I've got to have the wisdom of Solomon this morning. This is, they call it splitting the baby, a judgment. And I have to say, I've been on the planning committee for ever such a long time, rather too long that I care for. This is the first one ever that I've really got stuck on. Because I've arrived at a situation in my head, thanks to Mr. Turner, that once all the groundworks, etc., were out of the way, the future for the studio is better, because it would be quieter. There's no question about that, and there wouldn't be the fear or the concern for the business that some adverse occupation would take over next door, and then they'd really be sorry. So in that regard, it's a question of being careful what you wish for. So I've arrived at my head that that is a better opportunity. But the problem then is that if you allow the construction and the removal of this wall and the groundworks and so on, will the business stay there? Will they say, sod this, we're all off, we can't do work for 6 months, and I presume that is a massive risk to their business. And I don't know, they may not be able to tolerate. I can't see how, if you're doing groundworks there, you have vibration coming through the floor and through the walls, and builders shouting about, and scaffolding, and goodness, and bricks being cut and constructed. I don't see how that won't be picked up on recording equipment in the studio. Then we arrive at the position where the wall is all built and everything, and we've gone back to kind of normality for the studio, and then we've got the 2 flats. Now, one thing I will say to any deputation that comes along here is don't strong-arm me with the government's housing targets. We get enough of that from the damned MP when she goes on about it. She tells us we've got to build all these blinking houses all over the place, and we have to get on with it. We deal with it faster. So I won't be strong-armed like that. What I will do is consider every application on its own merits, and that's what I'm doing right now. My concern is that have we arrived at the situation that we're considering the 2 flats, what sort of accommodation does this give for the intended occupiers? The mechanical and ventilation to me is not a good thing. Not being able to open your own window on a very busy junction seems to me to be a very bad thing. The noise you're getting from passing traffic would be tremendous, very loud. And like I say, they're on the back of the pavement, literally 3-4 feet away from the road surface itself, which is a bus route, which is a bin route, which is ever so busy. People get irritated. There's noise all day long. So I think once I've arrived at the situation where I've accepted the wall would be built, that studio could go, but I've arrived at the situation where the 2 flats coming, I've arrived at the situation, what would it be like for the intended residential occupiers? And I think that this is a bad location, a poor location, to allow 2 flats. So I'd refuse the application on the grounds of adverse impact by not being able to open the windows. I know that is becoming increasingly common, doesn't mean to say I have to agree with it. And the noise from the road, the vibration from passing traffic and so on would have an adverse impact on the enjoyment of the home of the intended residential occupiers. So that's traffic noise, impact, vibration, and not being able to have fresh air into their homes. I have considered it very, very carefully, and I do believe that in the long term it would be better for the studio. But how do you arrive at that situation? The officers have done everything they can in the report to try and reduce the impact on the studio if this was to go ahead. Others might want to talk about an adverse impact by the removal of the wall, but it's only short term. You know, that annoyance won't go on for a long time. So it can't be a planning consideration, I would have thought, unless anybody tells me otherwise. You know, they're taking down the wall and putting up a new wall, whilst annoying, can't, as far as I'm aware, be a planning consideration because it will be resolved. So there you are. That's how I feel this morning.
Is that how you feel? Is that a proposal based on those reasons?
Yes, which I did describe.
Yes.
And I hate
Adverse
having
impact.
to describe it again later on.
Okay. All right. I'll come back to you for some wording. Okay. So
I've given the wording.
Okay.
That's the refusal I've put up.
Yeah. Okay. So the next person to speak is Councillor Atwell.
My comments might be a little shorter, Chair.
Sorry.
Sorry. Well, here's where I'm looking at the application before us. I can't resolve the matter of the ventilation either to any degree of satisfaction. As you know, I live on a busy junction, corner of a busy junction, slightly further set back from the road, but the idea that I wouldn't be able to have any kind of fresh air is difficult for me to understand how people would live in that circumstance. Para 821 is very clear around impact on the established business. And also, you will be unsurprised to know, I'll point out that the proposed development does not reach our parking standards or expectations, as it's put in the in this report. So I will second Councillor Hunt's proposal.
Okay. I had Councillor Smythe next, I think. Oh no, was it you? Sorry, Councillor Valerie. I thought I had Councillor Smythe. Councillor Valerie, sorry.
Valerie,
Keep up, Susie.
I just want to put a word in for the artists that are in those studios at the minute. We're short on studio space. Once people go out of the arches, it's very difficult for them to find another home. And I agree with everything that Councillor Hunt has said and Councillor Atwell.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe now.
Thank you. I also agree with much as what's being said. I think the lack of fresh air is, and the cost of the electricity is against any sort of sensible policies about cost of living and green policies. It would be expensive and wasteful to keep the system on all the time, and definitely a difficult place to live. We had a very interesting report to the climate Cabinet members meeting, and I believe the report's going to Cabinet. And one of the things that is new in that strategy for clean air in Portsmouth is the nature of the internal environment, and all sorts of advice about heat and fresh air exchange, and that balance between breathing in what undoubtedly isn't perfectly clean air, what we call fresh air, but also the internal environment and the need for good ventilation so you have a constant change of air. And I think that will start to affect our policies. It's coming up to Cabinet next time. I advise people to look at that. The noise from the ventilation system, I think, you know, especially if it's compensating for occasional opening of other windows, it does exist. It's a low hum that I can't think will do the South Sea sound any good. I do think we need a detailed plan to manage construction noise, should it go ahead, and the need to compensate for loss of business during the construction period. And it's not, I do see that condition, but it is a very difficult thing to negotiate after a planning application has been given. The loss of commercial space, especially for creative people setting out on careers, perhaps leaving the Arches or the Makers Guild, is very difficult. Renting a full shop, as somebody recently has done in Castle Road, is not an option open to many people at the start of a creative career. And Portsmouth is one of the lowest cities, according to a recent report, that for the rate of job creation in the UK. So we really do need to build on our creative industries and the huge output from the university and from our creative population, and concentrate on them in these commercial settings. I note the recommendation and the advice that this may not stand up in appeal, but I don't think the planning system is designed to cause a small local business to face stress and worry and perhaps failure. And we need to do the right thing in this, thankfully, very unusual case. So I will be supporting the refusal of this permission.
Okay. Councillor Mason, I'm going to go to first, and then Councillor Hunt again.
I think, whilst I am not enamoured of the alterations, I think that were they completed, that would be fine. But I'm unhappy with the level of information I have in paragraph 11 on the construction assessment. And I would like to delay a decision on this until such time as we have really detailed information about construction. Because if we don't have that, there is no way in which we can ensure that the building, the sound studio next door, will be able to continue in business. And I think it's important that it does continue in business. And so I would not be happy to approve the application on the amount of information which we have before us at the present time. I would ask for more information on the construction and how this will be managed, and how it will be managed in a way in which will not seriously damage the commercial viability of the neighbouring property.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Hunt.
I forgot to put in the bit that Councillor Pitt raised and Mr Hodges agreed upon, which was that if planning permission were granted approval, that it would drive away an established business. I think I heard that correctly. I may have got it wrong, but you know.
You did.
Oh dear. Well, we'll find it. We'll get it from Hugh. We'll just get it from the officer. Confirm it. But, Councillor Pitt mentioned it, and it just strikes me that here in Portsmouth we're trying to blend retail and creative industries together to create that in creative industries city that is providing so many jobs here. So are we allowed to consider that? I know we've done the questions for the officers, but should that go in or not, gentlemen? Something like that going on or not?
I think that might relate to the question around the policy, because there was a question about is a policy, and we haven't got the detail of that, but we all know that there is a policy around supporting cultural and creative industries, which would be relevant to planning.
Thank you, Chairman. David will come back on the policy matter there. With respect to the loss of the artistic community and businesses and so on in the current studios, because that building is Class E and doesn't control, it could be a day nursery or a restaurant, we can't protect the existing businesses of whatever niche they may be because of the ability for that use to change.
I beg your pardon, I misled you. I was talking about the impact on next door, which you say David is going to come to. I'm very clear on that one.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I think it was raised perhaps by one or two other councillors. I'll go through all the issues. So professionally, I don't think the ventilation issue and any low-level hum, I don't think that can amount to a reason for refusal. It's a common practice to install those in such developments. Noise and vibration from passing traffic, we don't have an objection from that from environmental services. As I said, hundreds and thousands of properties across the city are on the back of pavement or very close to the back of pavement on roads that are like this or even busier. We've discussed the effect on the recording studio next door. I've given you our advice. On parking standards, thank you, Councillor Atwell. Just ask members to consider the location of the development in a very sustainable local centre with lots of things on your doorstep, Southsea Town Centre nearby, the city centre, the train stations, the buses, the seafront. So a very, very sustainable location. And please bear in mind the existing use of the building has a parking effect in terms of people wanting to drive to visit or undertake their business in the building. So it's not a straight, it's going to demand only for the residents, so you have to offset it against the existing demand that may exist. The cost of electricity for the vents, I had a trickle vent put in my bathroom a few years ago for reasons of humidity, constant withdrawal. A, it wasn't noisy. I don't know if it's the same sort, it's not quite the same thing perhaps, but B, the electricity, I did ask the electrician how much electricity is used, next to nothing. It's very small. Just to answer that last point for completeness. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from members? I just want to make a comment myself. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, apologies, Chair. Just for clarity, I believe Councillor Hunt's initial question was about supporting the arts and our policies for that. So that's an objective in the local plan, Objective 7, to enhance Portsmouth's reputation as a city of culture, energy and passion, offering access for all to arts, sports and leisure. In terms of what that translates to in policy, let me just find that bit of the policy. So that's in PCS 8, which is our district centres policies. So what we're trying to do is direct leisure and community social uses to those district centres, which include Albert Road, Elm Grove. And just about looking at the map, detail is not great, but basically they both sit right on the edge of the boundary of that defined centre. So the recording studio is in the location that we would want it to be in planning terms, if that's the answer to your question.
But if we were, sorry, if I made it, but if we were to do something that would just shut it away and drive it away and close it down, how do we represent that in what we're deciding upon this morning?
So, yeah, so that's back to the agent of change principle. So what we've got to do is ensure that if we're dealing with a development, that we've considered that prospect. So the idea that if this use changes from a Class C use into a residential use, does that fatally compromise the ongoing potential of that business to operate? The reason why we've got a scheme that we have is because we've spent a lot of time working on a scheme that actually then physically separates the building, so we're confident that provides an acceptable and residential environment. Appreciate we're getting into contrary view for occupiers that would allow the recording studio to continue. And then most of the discussion, as I understand it, is in relation to potential disruption during the construction phase. And we've outlined where we can go to in terms of control of that, and we don't have complete control over that particular issue. And the only issue I just want members to consider is to show that they've considered that in the round. So we're not in a situation where, in effect, the recording studio has a veto over anything in the area, but we're applying the agent of change principle in a balanced way, which allows the building next door to potentially have a future for other uses. So it's in that balance.
I'll come to you, and I just want to make, because it relates to the agent of change things, I agree with Councillor Hunt. I think this is a really, really difficult application we've got before us because of the impact that it has on a business versus the potential adding of housing, and it's a real challenge. But I'm trying to focus on the planning reasons, and I can't get away from the agent of change things, because in order for one application to succeed, something very realistically might fail. Well, presumably they've gone through a planning application before where they've been scrutinised and have put in all these mitigations around their business, and it's just a really difficult one, because we're talking about, well, we're at situation A now, we'll be at B and it will be fine, but it's what happens between A and B that I think is what we're talking about here. And I don't think I can, in all conscience, particularly given the fact that we've just referenced a policy where we're encouraging the very thing now that could be in jeopardy in front of us, I don't think on balance in this particular occasion I could support it. It's such a shame that planning can't insist on the compensation, because I think for most of us, if there could be a really realistic and robust condition that was made on that, which is not within our gift, I think that's important that we need to emphasise that, is if we could do that, I could be brought into the A now, B then. But in the meantime, I'm hanging on to the agent of change stuff and the policy around supporting creative businesses, but I would be supporting the recommendation for refusal. Councillor Smythe wants to say something again.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to, those comments are much better coming from the chair, but I think you've summed it up really well. Councillor Mason did raise the possibility of a deferral conditional on us being satisfied that there was a really, really proper mitigation for building works, a proper plan we could understand and actually agree to, developed under deferral. Because, of course, doing a refusal risks a remote inspector coming forward and ignoring some of the things that we've put in as conditions and all the valuable work. Unless the NPFF is strong enough to influence the inspector, which is a risk. And I just wondered if Councillor Mason wanted to, I think we should look at the possibility of a deferral as being less risky. But I think it is an extraordinarily difficult thing to agree. And I think South Sea Sound must be very reassured that we do understand their situation and we do are trying to do something that's for the best. But what do you think the? I suppose we need to I just wanted to see if Councillor Mason wanted to say anything else in defence of a long referral, and whether the planning officers could recommend to us how long a deferral could be in order to get things sorted out. Because I was disappointed not to hear from the applicant any real acknowledgement that there would be problems there. That has weighted in my decision to give it a refusal, because he hasn't given me any hope through his deputation that he would take that seriously. So I remain supporting the refusal, but I do think, you know, given that any other use that could be similarly difficult for South Sea Sound, it is something that we need to take into account. Is that question clear? Thank you.
Well, you asked Councillor Mason whether he wanted to say anything else, so I'm going to go there first and then to officers.
I will propose a deferral in order that we may have further and professional information on how the construction can be carried out in a way which will not produce disruption for the operation of the adjacent recording studio. I will propose that.
Councillor Hunt.
What would that be?
Well, I'm terribly sorry. Love you to pieces, but I don't agree. The officers have given us all the information, really and truly, around that we're probably going to get, and they're going to watch this like a hawk if it were to go through, the construction that is. I don't doubt that for a moment. I trust them on that. And I would say too that this has been going on now for I'm not complaining about 1.5 hours. So with 10 or 12 and all these people in the room, the scrutiny given has been enormous. That's going to end in about 18 months' time. This will not happen anymore because the government's going to hand all these decisions to our lovely officers over there. Just think on that.
Thank you. I have a question on the back of what Councillor Smythe says. My understanding is if the planning committee cannot insist on the compensation and the detail, which I think is what officers have advised us to do, then deferring it would not leave us in any different situation. That's what my understanding is, but
Chair, can I assist?
Yes,
The
hopefully.
issue of compensation would be a private law matter between the businesses.
Okay, so that's a compensation, but
It's not a planning matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's not a planning matter.
My reasons for deferral were for further detailed information on process, not on compensation, because that would surely be a civil matter.
So on the process, can the planning committee demand more detail on that, or are you going to say that's down to buildings? I just want to get this clarified, because otherwise we'll possibly kick something down the road and we'll be back here talking about the same thing. So I just want that kind of clarified.
Yes, I think that would be our concern, Chair, in that we could request more information, but we can only go so far in the amount of construction information we can reasonably secure under the condition, and particularly in relation to the fact that even if the planning permission is granted, the applicant's not compelled to do it. At that point, you can start with any point within 3 years. And my concern would be you would just be 3 weeks later disappointed with the information, or maybe months down the line, that's still disappointed or lacking the clarity that you would want in that regard. Because I think we can't get to that point. I think it's.
Thank you for that
Thank you
clarification.
very much. I shall be not seconding
Okay. In which case, we have one. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, are we finding a form of words for your concern around agent of
Yeah, I'm
change?
just coming on to that.
I mean, the inspector needs to know our great concern about that if this goes on
Yeah,
to appeal.
so we have a proposal in front of us by yourself and seconded by Councillor Outwell for refusal. Now we need to try and find the planning reasons. The ones that I've noted down that have been covered, I respectfully heard some of the comments that Simon made in terms of mechanical ventilation and noise, but there was something around adverse impact, Councillor Hunt, that you talked about, which was...
They've noted all that down. They know
Yeah.
exactly what I said.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to go over it again.
Chair, can
It's
I just
unfair.
come in on the ventilation point? Ventilation is covered by the building regs as well.
So it's the adverse
And there are
impact,
some
it's the
wind-
adverse the environment of the lack of fresh air, being unable to open windows as unsuitable. I hear what the officers say, but my view is that it's an unsuitable environment from noise and ventilation by not being able to open windows for future intended occupiers. It's not the actual ventilation itself.
I understand that officers did say windows could, it was the windows on the front of the building that couldn't be opened. The others could.
But then that's even worse because we're having all the smog and everything come into their windows, and we know now we've got an obligation to look after children because they keep on dying from breathing in noxious fumes from all the cars and whatnot outside, even though our air is getting cleaner. So I'm not going to go down, Julia, with great respect, don't want to go down that path.
Okay, the next one was parking. So I can't remember the words that you normally use, Councillor Atwell. I'm sure they've been on a few previous meeting minutes.
They're about to tell me it won't fly, but the proposal doesn't reach or doesn't match our parking standards.
Okay. And the third one is around the agent of change and the particular unique context of this particular impact of the building and the impact that would have on that.
So, General, we're
business.
looking for help here. Is there a form
Yeah.
of words that we can utilise with the professional advice from yourselves?
Well, just looking at the extract from the MPPF, which talks about a significant adverse effect on the operation of an existing business from a neighbouring development. So that would be the core of the reason for refusal on that ground.
Thank you, Simon. And then the
So
last...
I'd like to add that in then, if it's all right.
Yes,
building on what you
yes, if we could add that in. And the last one that we raised was to do with the PCS8 policy, which was about sporting, cultural and creative industries.
So is that in relation to the loss of the existing use within the within the application building, or is it
both?
It's
both.
So definitely not in relation to the loss of the use in the existing building. That's just something beyond our control, as Mr. Turner's explained.
Because of the
Tomorrow it can close down and open
okay.
as a subway.
Well, let's focus on...
that's beyond our control. So I don't know if you actually need that policy, because I think it falls within your agent of change reason.
Okay.
Because
Take
what
your
you're
advice.
worried about is jeopardising an existing business, isn't it? Yeah.
If that could give weight to the agent of change comment, that would be great. Okay. Simon.
Chair, and then Councillor Hunt's second point, going back a few minutes, was noise and vibration from traffic.
It was. Thank you.
And before we go to that, can I thank the officers for the help that they've given?
And Chair, just conscious, as it's additional residential development, it would normally be caught by the need to meet an appropriate assessment under habitats regs, so we would need our contributions towards bird aware and nutrient neutrality.
Thank you very much, officers. Okay, so we have a proposal before us, proposed by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Atwell, for refusal. Can I have an indication of all of those who are in support of that proposal to refuse? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that 8? So it's 8. All those in favour of against it, sorry, okay. Against the proposal. Let's get myself in a muddle there.
And against refusal.
Okay, against refusal, 1, and that means no abstentions. I believe that totals 9. Okay, in which case that motion is carried and planning permission is therefore refused. Thank you everyone for your, thanks for the deputations, and thank you very much for the questions and the comments. Do we want a 5-minute breather? 5 minutes or 10 minutes, realistically? 10 minutes, 12:15, we'll come back.
Can you send for pizza, please? All right. I was kidding, for the record.
Okay, welcome back everyone. Just to remind you that we reordered things, so the next item is back to item 4, which is the construction site at the former Debenham site, 44 to 66 Palmerston Road. And I believe it's Simon who's doing the presentation. Over to you, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have, I don't think we have a deputy speaking against the scheme, but we have the planning applicant's agent, and we have some SMAT matters. I have a feeling I'll cover the SMAT matters in the presentation, but I'll check at the end. Okay, so at the former Debenham site in Palmerston Road, Southsea Town Centre, this is a Section 73 application to amend various aspects of the proposed development 20/00620 FUL, with also various planning conditions amended. There is a full development description at the top of your committee report and online, but of course I'll take you through the principal changes. What I want to emphasise in the first place is the amendments are limited with respect to the overall scale of the scheme, which is delivering the reuse of what was a vacant retail store in Southsea Town Centre and providing new commercial uses on the ground floor, including the GP surgery, and 134 flats above and to the rear. So the changes, aside from that, no changes to those factors are very limited. They are an amended position of the Portland Road access point. There are 2 on Portland Road. This is one of them that I'll show in a few minutes. And in conjunction with that, the building has always had a basement, and so the previous consent, the first consent, had permission to construct a ramp down into the basement. The basement doesn't have and didn't have any access for cars. So the proposal of the first application was to construct a ramp down into the basement off Portland Road. This application proposes to not construct that ramp and instead to have an at-grade undercroft access. There will be reduced commercial floor space, about 100 square metres, compared to the consent. That will be replaced with parking undercroft. Again, all these will be shown in a few moments. Wider associated relatively limited amendments to parking and general site arrangements. The provision of a nearby off-site parking area, and minor detail, the deletion of one seating terrace to one of the flats above the deleted ramp. Other matters that have been settled in the application, there was a legal agreement attached to the first consent, which required for various matters that addressed the viability of the scheme with respect to whether or not it could make provision for affordable housing. That has now been settled with further viability work carried out in this application, and that's set out in the report how unfortunately the development can't quite provide the requisite profit as well as provide for affordable housing. Happy to answer any further questions on that. But also the applicant, as part of this process, has settled the nutrient neutrality and bird aware matters from the last application, and indeed the health facility. The applicant was required to exercise reasonable endeavours, a legal term, to secure, didn't have to secure it, but had to exercise reasonable endeavours towards securing the NHS facility. Final contracts, I believe, are yet to be signed, but the applicant has shown more than 2 years of extensive work with the NHS to bring forward that GP surgery, and it's highly likely it will indeed happen later this year, which is excellent for the site and surrounds. So just to make sure you know where we're looking at, the former Debenham store in central town centre of Southsea. The building was a rectangular shape, and a great big hole was taken out of the back of it to produce a building that could be used for residential with a central corridor and therefore flats looking over the front and to the rear. So it's taken on this U shape. Turned through 90 degrees here because some of the site plans are in this form. This is a first floor podium. landscaped area that the residents at the rear would look over. And Block A is the block that's been extended up as well as converted and had an extension to the side on Portland Road. And then Block B is entirely new. Block A is substantially completed, indeed with residential occupation, of 2 of the ground floor commercial units, a gym and a vets, and the GP surgery occupying about half later in the year, subject to final completion of all those matters. Upstairs, all the flats, you'll see a photograph in a moment. To the rear, Block B is 3-storey above an undercroft for parking. So site access at 2 points off Portland Road and reusing the Tonbridge Street access to the rear, which would take you under Block B, where there is car parking, and into the wider site. The extra parking land that has been provided or is proposed by the applicant is the area in pink, just 50 metres up the road, and I'll show you some photographs of that later. There is the site. So the 2 extra stories built above, in officers' opinion, very successful in their appearance and overall effect on the town centre and the building, and the renovated former Debenhams store below, so 4 stories of flats above the commercial, by the precinct, the bus stops, etc. I'm just showing you the first floor straight away to remind you that, to show you the clear position of Block B as sitting above the undercroft. On the list of the changes, just to get the minor point out of the way first, that the ramp was coming down underneath here, and you can see the curve of it that was taking it down into the basement, and simply there was a podium on top of that. Without the ramp, that corner was cut off, and sorry, I thought I had my cursor on. It's on my screen, but it's not for you. Here we are. That is the ramp running down into the basement, and that is the podium landscape area on top of it. With the removal of that ramp underneath, that particular bit of the podium has come off, and just that's the one terrace to that particular flat that would now come off. So that was the one change at first floor level. Officers aren't overly concerned about the loss of one private terrace, especially given the location next to the town centre and very close to Southsea Common. So here is the approved plans from 5 years ago. So there you can see this is the position of the ramp. So coming in at ground floor level, but excavating down into the existing basement. Above that, the application plan showed 6 commercial units. That's always been up to the applicant, whether it's 1 unit or X number. That's always been in the gift of the applicant. Roughly a rectangular shape with back of house plant and so on. Now, the applicant has not been able to provide the ramp down to the basement because of the restrictions that are set out in the report. Here is the basement. First of all, extra structural supports, these massive girders and braces and RSJs, joists have gone in at various points across the structure, not only in the basement, and these have restricted what was anticipated to be parking space. A, losing spaces, or B, if a space was next to a brace, you wouldn't be able to get out of the door as it would hit against it. Also, all these cable trays have had to go in at quite low height, and there are sprinklers as well at relatively low height. And then, had the basement come forward for parking, some of the columns would also have been removed, and they would have required, of course, straddling joists, which also have a depth to them, bringing the ceiling height down. So the problems with the basement meant that parking wasn't really a practical option for the applicant, and that is why the application has come forward. The ceiling heights, therefore, or not the ceiling heights, but the heights of some of these trays would be problematic as well for all cars or some of the taller cars to actually circulate. So the basement effectively is extremely problematic, if not impossible, for car parking. Not the applicant's fault. The applicant bought the site from the previous developer. So the proposal is, before I outlined how the ground floor was roughly rectangular with a line across the back here, so you'll see that we've got some undercroft here. This is beneath the first floor podium, has been cut into, and that's where the 100 square metres less of ground floor commercial space is provided. That's a relatively small amount in the town centre, and we're still very happy with the over 2,000 square metres that is coming forward and is already partially occupied. That's dealt with in the report. What it's meant is that the loss of parking that would have been in the basement, some of that can be replaced in this rear area that's been gained. And this is where the ramp would have gone in, approximately. Slight change to the position, as I mentioned. And that is now, instead of being a ramp into the basement, it's at grade level access to bins, bike stores and parking. The rest of the site is essentially unchanged. For completeness, the parking indicated by the applicant, but it's that the local planning authority wouldn't seek to say you should have so many spaces for visitors, so many spaces for commercial occupiers, so many spaces for residents, but the applicant's indicated how he may wish to do it. We've got visitor spaces, these 8 or so, towards the site entrance for normal reasons. In pink are parking spaces for the occupiers. The GP surgery naturally will have its own requirement, and that is agreed with the applicant for medical reasons. And then the rest in this green sort of colour are indicated for residents. With respect to the basement, this is back turned round north to south. So this is the approved plan, which showed the construction of this wide ramp going down into the existing basement and opening out into a car parking area. That's where the photograph was taken, this sort of area. The blue lines here was just spare space that was indicated for possible storage, but no restriction or firm intention was given to that. And in the corner here, this was for basement bike parking, the principal parking area. As built so far and is seeking consent is a much restricted basement. I've explained why the basement ramp and use of the car park is not really possible. This is the area where, I'll show you some greater details in a moment, where the main bike store would be. Down a short flight of steps with a ramp on it to get up and down there. There is an objection from the Portsmouth Cycling Forum on that point. I'll come back to that in a bit more detail. And there's a plant and stairs area here. These two areas would be to fire resistant construction of 1 hour. And one of the other issues as well is also the water table and the levels of damp and water ingress in substantial areas of the basement. But this area has effectively been tanked and fire resistant. Just for completeness, this is the Portland Road elevation. So there's the end. I'll just show you the photograph. That's the same view effectively. So the retained building and extended, and then this one new element is completely new, nearly completed, as you can see. And there's the undercroft as constructed. Sorry, the access leading to the undercroft. So as approved, that was going to be running down into the ramp, and it's just moved slightly, 4.6 metres further south to the undercroft. You can see at grade. Otherwise, no change to the elevations. There's Block B sitting behind, 3 stories above the undercroft. You can see this is the last element of Block A that is under substantial construction. So that looks nearly complete externally, and they'll be cracking on inside. And then Block B to the rear, you can just about make it out in the back here. So this is looking from Tonbridge Street back at the side. This is a few weeks ago, and it's up to the first story there, and that's continuing. Here is the undercroft at the back of the site. So I'm standing in the site here. That is the undercroft where some of the parking, bike stores, etc. would be, and the access down into the basement store for the bikes. This is the extra parking land behind this wall with these vans, etc. parked on it. So this piece of land was historically associated with the Portland Hotel next to it, and so has a use class C1 historically. That hotel closed some time ago and is still under conversion into flats. The parking for that development doesn't include this land anymore, so it's available for this site. There were, some of you may remember, if you were involved at the time, through the 2010s, of various series of applications for the redevelopment of this parking plot now. ground floor commercial with flats above, various iterations, success and failure, and so on. The last consent was 6, 7, 8 years ago. That wasn't implemented, so it's fallen away. And so this land is unencumbered by any other obligation or planning history to provide parking. So it's spare parking at the moment, effectively, albeit with either a null use or related to the previous hotel. So there's a planning application just received that will be publicised shortly to cross the T's and dot the I's in terms of changing the use of that land, technically from null use to, or former hotel use, to use associated with the application site. So the applicant has done that because the loss of the basement parking, the 45 spaces, couldn't all be compensated for in the new Undercroft, and so he has sought further spaces to bring that much closer to the total. So the numbers approved in the planning application were 105 car parking spaces. As set out in the report, including this extra land, there were 102, so a loss of 3 spaces. Since publication, there's been a loss of 1 parking space, car parking, in order to improve bike parking. I'll show you that in some more detail. I should say that officers were happy to support the application without this extra parking land, given the town centre location where you've got pretty much everything you might want, most things you might want, on your doorstep: shops, restaurants, bars, medical facilities, the library, the seafront, public transport, not too far away to the city centre, and the train stations, the hovercraft, etc. So we would have been happy to recommend it, but the applicant has sought to provide nearly the same amount of parking by proposing this extra land. Turning into some more detail, this is an extract of the wider site. So on the site frontage, either side of the Undercroft, which is here, you've just got some visitor bike parking, appropriately set at the front of the site, near to the door into the GP surgery. Then these are the stairs down into the basement parking and the ramp. So about 40% of the width of the stair would be to a ramp to help you get your bike up and down. There's the relatively short flight of steps. This was the one extra car parking bay that's changed since publication, taking the bay away to make sure there's good space to get into the access there. And this says cargo bikes or any other sort of storage under the Undercroft that could be wished for. This is the GP's own bicycle store. And then the last bike store set behind units 2 and 3 for residents and or occupiers of the commercial units. We did have that with different bike racks in it, but actually now we've shown it, or the applicant has shown it, I should say, as empty, free of any particular racks, so it's flexible as and when occupiers come onto the site. A bit more detail, the basement bike parking, we've got Sheffield hoops set at an appropriate distance so you can comfortably use both sides of them for bikes, and then bike racks against the wall, some doors to get in so it's secure as well as weatherproof. There's a vignette of it, a 3D image. A bike stand would go into the corner. If members have read the report, there's the whole travel plan, which has all these sorts of initiatives encouraging people to use the car less and to cycle, walk, and use the bus and trains, etc. more. Some of these bike facilities would be part of that travel plan. This is under construction, of course, but it was just to show that the flight of steps is not long and is not particularly steep, and the ramp will go up to one side. So in the round, we've had to look at whether there have been any significant changes either to the site and surrounds or indeed to planning policy since the last application was approved. Broadly speaking, there hasn't. Planning policy is evolving and so on, but broadly speaking, the thrust of supporting a town centre uses and residential development remains, and so in the round the application is supported still by officers, indeed strongly supported. And the proposed changes don't affect those key elements. Otherwise, the application specifically sought the amendment of 3 conditions for plans, the transport strategy and the parking provisions. As set out in the report, it's typical that a range of other conditions will also need to be updated for one reason or another, and they are set out in full in the report now. A new condition 15, I think, is the key one that will deal with the ongoing construction and increasing occupation of the site, and the balance that needs to happen there to make sure that the site functions satisfactorily. That's what the applicant will want anyway, but the local planning authority will also want to make sure that the waste collections, bike parking, car parking, general circulation and accesses are suitable, while bit by bit more occupation comes into the site, but construction is continuing before it tapers down and finally finishes. So condition 15 deals with that for further submissions over the next few months to properly manage that. And that's one reason why, for example, the bike store here is shown empty instead of having racks that we saw earlier. That's so that as new occupiers come in, their needs can be met. There's more flexibility. We don't want to be overly prescriptive on the use of parking spaces and indeed the bike spaces. So in terms of bikes, there's the basement provision, and there's also secure and covered ground floor provision as well for any other different requirements that the occupiers have as they come into the site. Right, to the SMAT. So I think I've probably taken you through everything already. Let's have a look. The position of the access stairs to the basement. Oh yes, just for completeness. You can see during the course of the application, the stairs were shown centrally. That's actually just the one side, so that's why that's just been updated for completeness. Bike store D has been amended, as I said earlier, without the racks and as an open, flexible space. The car parking layout has changed, as I've explained to you. The bin stores, the details of that are ongoing with our waste collection services. There's clearly space for them. It's just the actual fine details that we're still looking at, and that's reserved by condition. Otherwise, we've included the list of amended plans in condition 2 in the appendix there, with some of them deleted, some replaced, and some doubled up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that report. We do have 2 deputations. First of all, I'd like to apologise for the amount of time you've had to wait. As I said, I did sort of rejig this in the order of requests. So the first person doing a deputation who is objecting is Nicola Waite from Portsmouth Cycle Forum. Is she here? I didn't remember her introducing herself. No? Okay. So that's not happening. And so the next deputation is from Mr. Jonathan McDermott, who is the agent. I thought I recognised you. Okay, you have up to 6 minutes, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair and members. Firstly, on behalf of the applicant, we'd like to thank the officers at Portsmouth City Council for their diligence and hard work in bringing this variation forward. It's always difficult when a scheme has to evolve to the circumstances of the site. No scheme effectively is immune from that, and the changes you have before you today are as a direct result of a developer coming onto the site and making a scheme work, or at least trying to make a scheme work. I just wanted to highlight some of the points that Simon so graciously put into his report, and just really re-emphasise what the applicant has sought to do to bring this scheme as close as possible to that which was approved 5 years ago. When the application was originally submitted, yes, there was a net loss of 15 car parking spaces on this site. That has now been reduced to a net loss of 4. What my client has done in this case is sought to and purchased additional land, the Tunbridge Street parking area, in order to make up the difference, 12 parking spaces, from the 15 originally lost. In addition to that, there has been a loss on site. Simon's already mentioned that in terms of that singular parking space to provide additional circulation space for the basement level cycle store. On parking specifically, I just wanted to remind members that this is a very, very sustainable site. I'm a bus user myself and a cycle user myself. This is one of the best connected parts of Portsmouth in terms of its level of connectivity, and that is defined by the Department for Transport's brand spanking new connectivity tool. this rates on an 80-point out of 100-point scale. To give you a comparison, that is the same level of connectivity as the O2 in Greenwich, in central London. That is how good this part of Portsmouth is for motor public transport other than the private car. That connectivity is used to inform policy. So specifically 115 to 117 are the present framework, and then coming forward, development management policies or decision-making policies TR3 and TR4 of the proposed 2026 MPPF consultation. Moving then to cycle storage, something that has been vacillated on both by us and the Cycle Forum, etc. The ramp. So Department for Transport, Cycle Infrastructure Design and the Cycling England advice all talk about new build development. This is a retrofit. However, what we've sought to do here is get to a point where that cycle ramp is in line with certainly the Cycling in England advice in terms of gradient and the DFT advice in terms of length. So we have ramps here that are significantly less than the maximum 10 metres as provided by the DFT advice, with a 2-metre long rest point at the halfway mark, and are significantly less than the Cycle England advice on incline at 26 degrees, where Cycle England provides a maximum of 28. This widened ramp also provides for a wider range of pedal cycles and electrically assisted pedal cycles, with a particular note that the regulations, the APC regulations 2015, also allow what's called walking assist, a throttle control, which allows the bike to be pushed by the motor up to 3.7 miles an hour. So that is a specific regulation that is there to enable these slightly heavier bikes to be assisted up ramps. As a final point, and as a complete aside from everything, my client has sat here today listening to the importance of culture and reinforcing the cultural industry within the city, and wholly welcomes that. They would like to point out that they have been approached by Love Southsea, specifically in relation to the final unit available. That is proposed to be a sequence of artist studios, little pods, that is allowed for by Condition 8 in your report as an EC3 type use. Condition 8 provides for E, A to G, and those artist studios fall neatly into EC. What we've also pointed out, and again through great endeavours by the client, the NHS are moving in. That is effectively happening, as Simon has relayed, and that will provide an important medical facility right in the heart of Southsea. Again, members, I can only thank the officer's diligence in this respect. We commend this scheme to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for raising those particular points. Okay, that's the end of the deputations. So I come to members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Councillor Hunt first.
Yeah, okay, isn't it super to have the actual applicant here doing this work in the city? Absolutely super. I'm very grateful he come along today. So we're talking about here a loss of 3 car parking spaces and an increase in 4 cycle spaces. I think that's what this is all about. And that's for 134 homes, and altogether 250 cycle storage spaces, 187 for the actual building. Is that about right, gentlemen?
It's about right because of the cycle store in D, for example, the number of spaces counted has gone down. It's a flexible space now, so that will vary, and then it's less 4 car parking spaces now because of that one other change. But you've got the broad picture.
I thought so, and I'm very glad to have it, and I'm very glad it's come here today just to revise it, as it were. So thanks to the ward councillors too.
Thank you. So just to remind members, we're on questions. Councillor Mason next.
2 questions. One concerning the cycle ramp. What is the actual angle of the cycle ramp? Question 2 concerns parking. I see that there are 82 parking spaces for residence parking spaces for 134 flats. It is likely that in time, many more people will require parking than the 82, probably. Will these people be able to access the KC parking zone on the same basis as other residents of the area?
Thank you, Councillor. The angle of the ramp is 26 degrees. I think I've just seen just fractionally, as the agent said, Jonathan said, just fractionally below the maximum gradient specified in the national guidance. And as it happens, I think the ramp put in with the stairs is also very helpful. That's not in the guidance, but it's wider and easier than some of the narrow channels you see. So, and he's talked about the throttle and so on. So the angle 26 degrees, to answer your question. The overall parking ratio, as I said earlier, officers would have been happy to have recommended an even lower ratio because of the location, the highly sustainable location, backed up with a travel plan and the level of bike parking. As it happens, the applicant has sold some of the flats already, and so has an idea of what the requested take-up of parking is. The flats come included with the price, sorry, a car parking bay comes included with the price of the flat until and unless they're all taken up. But of the occupiers, of the people buying flats already, not everyone has wanted them. It's around about the 60% mark. That's about 1/6 of the way through the sale of the flat, so I think that's more than just 2 or 3 or 4. It's a good indication of a rough amount of the sort of demand, and that approximate 60% take-up corresponds with the approximate 60% of parking available if the indicative distribution and allocation is what the applicant finally provides. So as it happens, it appears that the parking on car parking would meet the demand. And then that takes me to your last point. The residents would nevertheless, I understand from the Highways Department, be eligible to apply for a permit or 2 permits in parking KC at the cost £30 and then 120, I think, for the second permit. But you do get 1 space with your flat included in the price, subject to availability.
Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Of the 102 car parking spaces, how many should we expect to be fully accessible?
That's a building regulations matter, so I don't have the figure. Undoubtedly, the applicant is alive to that, and we've got 5 that I can see. If you could have the plan up, please, Jane. If you'd like to see where they are, Councillor. I'll just get the laser pointer again. So, yeah, 3 there out in the open air, and then 1, 2 underneath the undercroft.
Councillor Smythe.
2 very, very quick questions. The first is the walls that we saw around the Tunbridge Street parking area, I guess are part of the listed building that is Portland Terrace. Will they be maintained and enhanced as part of the provision of parking at the back? What we've got there is a little street that has always been a bit of a kind of mess, really, yes. I did have responsibility for developing Portland Terrace way back as social housing, affordable housing, and the back always let down the front, which is a grade 2, I think, listed building, Thomas Ellis owning building. Will presumably those white walls at the back, which are part of the listed building setting, will be enhanced and retained? And I'm asking a question about that. The second question is about mobility scooters. You know, this is a really fine development, and the people I've spoken to have said how good it is. And there's a lot of public support for the building. People love it. It has also included people who might need to use mobility scooters to help them get out and about and take advantage of the flat environment in which it's sitting. Will there be places by negotiation for mobility scooters?
Thank you, Councillor. That's a very good question about the listed status or not of that wall. I don't know. I rather doubt it, but I will certainly look at that further after the application is decided today. I think possibly not would be my initial view, but I nevertheless shall look at that. The wall is necessary. You can see that the van is slightly above street level. There's a slight rise up in the site. So I think it's necessary to keep it anyway, just for practical reasons, just to make sure you don't drop off the edge onto the pavement if you're reversing in or something. So I'm absolutely sure the applicant has no intentions of doing anything to that wall apart from giving it a fresh lick of paint. But I'll certainly look at that and work with them on that to make sure. Well, I'm sure he'd be happy to retain it, listed or not. He's nodding his head. So.
I had to retain it back in the day, so I do recall that being an important setting for the listed building.
Thank you, indeed. Otherwise, mobility scooters, none of the flats are adapted specifically for accessibility reasons, so there aren't any particularly wide doors or turning space and that sort of thing, or indeed space in the hall for the storage of your main outdoor scooter, where you charge it and transfer into an indoor scooter if that's your level of ability and access. That's not to say, conceivably, some people might have an informal, smaller type scooter. Back again to the maximum flexibility and moving along as occupants come forward wishing to buy a flat. They have the negotiation discussion with the applicant in each and every occasion. So if someone were to say, I don't have a car, but since the car parking space is included in the price, can I park my mobility scooter there? I'm absolutely sure the applicant will say, yes, that's fine. That's your allocated space for whatever you wish to use it for. And then there are the bike stores as well, that the 1D that I showed you that has open flexible use depending on who comes on board.
Okay. Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if the officer could confirm that the developer's not removing the basement parking for financial reasons, and that it is because of the bracing, because of the cable, the cable mechanisms that are under there, and for new, I believe, building policies that have come in.
Thank you. I've not put him on the spot with that question in terms of finances because it's not really the point in terms of planning, but as set out earlier, it's practical reasons, irrespective of finances. I mean, all those braces cost an awful lot of money, as it is, just for maintaining the basement without the use as a car park. So yes, it's practical structural reasons, the fire safety regulations, electrical supply, all those things have contributed to the basement being apparently near impossible to use for parking.
Thank you.
That was going to be my question, was why wasn't that picked up in the original planning application?
Yeah. The original applicant, I don't think, had ever an intention to develop it themselves. So they may not have looked at everything. I don't want to be unfair to them, whoever they were. And it's probably just one of those things. How far do you investigate? How far can you investigate to the nth degree on what technical matters you do? It's up to the developer, isn't it? Their own due diligence and what they think they may or may, but things will often turn out actually to be different. And then the fire regulations have continued to change and produce more restrictions as well.
Thanks for that clarification. Are there any more questions from members? No. In which case, comments? Councillor Hunt, Councillor Smythe, and then Councillor Stanton. Sorry, brain.
All right, I'm going to move the report with the conditions attached. The officers. In fact, I mean, this is just such a brilliant, stunning development. You know, it's almost one car per flat. I had a lot of things up. I just want to thank you very much indeed for bringing such a wonderful development to this part of our city. I wish you would come to North End and help us with the former QuickSave building, which we could do with being regenerated, but nobody will touch it. I wonder if Ed will actually ask you to come and look at it. We'll see. Anyway, I've made a pitch. That's all I can do. I must say, you know, to hear the good news about the NHS GP surgery coming is everything we could have wished for. It really is everything we could have wished for. Ed has described the connectivity very well indeed, the extra buses and the service we're doing with £52 million from the government that Councillor Candlish is dealing with, improving our bus services, and Ed touched upon the cultural aspect of what we do here, and together with the seafront, it is just so blinking exciting to come and live here. And I'm not surprised the flats have all gone already. And what I meant, the flats are being allocated and sort of, it would be a lovely place to live, wouldn't it? But I must say this, you know, I'm waxing lyrical. I won't go on. I think they've got how pleased I am, and we're going to see, presumably, Love Southsea going in there, and all these creative anchors. And I hope that the site has excited the applicant too, because he should be very proud of what they have done and are doing there, and indeed for the area. But this is all those flats. I think it's about 134 altogether, on top of 835 at Tipner, 138 at Kingston Prison that we've done, 15 at the old Odeon site in North End, 209 coming, I know, I'll come to the point in a minute, 209 at St James's Park, and 134 here. That's an enormous number of homes being built already. Yet some people complain and tell us we must go faster. Thank you very much. I've moved.
I picked that up and I've extrapolated the relevant bits for this application. It's in my head. Okay, Councillor Smythe.
I want to second the recommendation to approve this following the officer's recommendations. We brought it here originally because of the level of public interest in this development and the initial concerns about car parking. I must say that I spent a lot of my life in Palmerston Road, one way and another, and I hear people stop me and say what a beautiful building that is. People think it's a huge enhancement to our shopping street, and we can only hope that somebody comes forward and does the same thing to the Knight and Lee building, which is a disgrace to Southsea. I want to put on public record, so this does need to be minuted, my considerable disappointment about the lack of affordable or social housing on the site. We do have very little affordable and social housing on the site. In fact, a large number of it is in Portland Terrace, which I built for Portsmouth Housing Association as their development officer in the 1980s. But we do need more. I understand the reasons. I'm not going to raise an objection, but I want to put it on record that we need to be vigilant about that in the future. I'm relieved there's some flexibility about mobility scooters, and I'm pleased to see the provision of cycle storage and of the GP. And I'm content, and I hope that we see the improvement of Tunbridge Street, which has in the past been something of a blot on Southsea and a not very safe feeling place if you go there at night. So I'm happy to support the approval of this development, and also to commend the developers for the amount of public praise that I pick up when talking to people in Palmerston Road. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Stan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say it's obviously very limited changes that are happening, and it is clearly a fantastic development. Well done, guys. Absolutely amazing. It's fantastic to see a building that could have ended up like the Debenhams in town, looking completely and utterly derelict, being turned into probably what is one of the best developments we've had in this city in the last decade or so. It's clear through safety issues, structural safety issues, that amendments have had to be made in the basement. And I'll also commend the applicant on the fact that he's gone out and purchased extra land to try and cover the spaces that were lost in the basement. And obviously the officers twice now today have asked us to take into consideration the local amenities, public transport, and without question, probably apart from the city centre and the Hard, this is the most accessible place in the city. So for that reason, I'll be 100% supporting this.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Mason.
In this area, I'm always worried about the pressure of parking because the nearest parts of KC zone are very, very heavily oversubscribed. It isn't just the 116% for the whole of the zone. However, I do not think that the applicant could have done more than he has done to try and alleviate any pressures on that. The purchase of the property in Tunbridge Street and the rejigging, the realignment, has given us 82 residence parking spaces for 134 flats, 60%, and from what the officers have informed us, this is what we could expect from a development of this type. So I don't think the developer could have done more than he has done, and so I'm very happy to support the application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I just want to agree with everybody. The development's fantastic. I drive past it every day, and I speak to the chap called Steve that's on the gate that looks after the kids when they go to school. So no, great development, and I know the guys have got a great reputation, and this holds up to their reputation. And also to purchase that extra parking, I think, is very commendable. They didn't have to do that. The officers have mentioned that, so well done, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe often talks about adding conditions. Is it worth adding a condition about that wall, or are we confident? It seems to, I mean, everything is very positive, and there's obviously a good relationship, and I think all the signs are that we wouldn't need to. But in different circumstances, sometimes for belt and braces, we put it as an additional condition. I just wouldn't mind the officers' advice on that.
Thank you. There will be a legal agreement required to make sure that land is A, provided, and B, laid out and maintained for parking purposes associated with the main site. So we can weave that into that agreement.
Thank you. Just thought.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's really important because the back of the development we're talking about, it looks as if it's going to have a bit of landscaping, look very nice. It could be badly let down in terms of marketing if it looks a bit grotty, as it has done for quite a long time. So that would be included in that negotiation that you do, because it could be made to be quite pleasant.
Thank you.
Chair, I understand the car park is covered by a separate planning application as well, so it will be considered then.
Councillor Hunt.
I noted it was going to have a separate planning application, but that presumably would be delegated, and I wouldn't personally want to call that in. But if we could include a condition about that in this at this moment, I'll be reassured that you do something about it.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Looking at the quality of everything that the applicant is doing, I don't believe for a moment that he wouldn't want to make the back even better than it is now. So I have every faith in that.
Absolutely agree, but just thought I'd just mention it. Okay, so we've got a proposal in front of a motion before us, proposed by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Smythe, to move officers' recommendations for conditional permission. All those in favour? Unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Congratulations, and on the, well, you've picked up the vibe. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing it all completed. Okay, shall we push on, people? So the next item is Southsea Seafront, which is item 5 in our packs. Okay, I believe, is that you done, Simon? Yeah, I think it's Ed. What? No worries. We're ready to go? Over to you.
Chair, thank you. Good afternoon. Right, here we are on another batch of public realm conditions associated with subfrontage, the South Sea defences, in particular subfrontage 5 East, that was the subject of the Section 73 application that came before you last November. So, as you can see from the screen in front of you, there are a long list of conditions under this application. However, it's the ones underlined that are for consideration by yourselves today, namely Condition 16, soft landscaping, Condition 21, external lighting, Condition 22, street furniture, Condition 24, hard surfacing, and Condition 26, roads and footpaths. I move on. So, just to remind you, the sections of the front of the defence scheme that we're looking at is that within the yellow box there, so straddling South Parade Pier. As members will recall, as I mentioned, the Section 73 was determined in November last year. The proposals were for a managed beach, a raised promenade and a stepped revetment with sheep pile tow as a primary defence, a low reinforced concrete wall at the back of the promenade and planted terraces as a secondary defence, and is a continuation of the frontage from Speaker's Corner to the Pyramids, the construction of which was completed in December 24. Sorry, Councillor, is that, yeah. I beg your pardon. Would you like me to repeat that previous bit? Okay. So, yeah, so continuation basically of previously completed frontages along the South Sea frontage, and this will be followed at some point in the near future by subfrontage 6, which goes further to the east towards Eastney. So these plans, a lot of detail on Coastal Partners plans, difficult to see on screen, I realise, but they are obviously all available on the public access website for you to look at. As with previous subfrontages, and it's always been the applicant's intention that the scheme is led by a landscape design approach. So this does not introduce anything particularly new to this subfrontage. It's simply a continuation of what I think you would agree is the very high quality of the previously completed subfrontages, and rolling forward the same features in terms of landscaping, planting, street furniture, lighting columns, benches, etc. As shown on the next slide, there's some visual images of of seating, of ramps down to the beach, of the lamp columns, the listed lamp columns and new lamp columns. I'll go into that in a bit more detail in due course. Turning now to the conditions in turn. So condition 16 deals with soft landscaping. And again, continuing the theme with raised planters, large sunken boulders, planting to reflect the character of the shingle along the seafront, 3 distinct species habitats, evergreen, seasonal and annual wildflowers. The palette has been designed to provide year-round colour and structure, and obviously plants have been chosen that are resistant to the fairly harsh climatic conditions experienced at times down there. This is a a visualisation of the planters that form part of the secondary defence along the back of the esplanade, with a view of South Parade Pier in the distance. Again, you'll have seen this previously. This is just a slide showing some of the colour mix of the proposed planting. Noting that any failures in planting are obviously required to be replaced, that fail within 5 years are required to be replaced. Moving on to external lighting. So the lamp columns, some of the listed lamp columns are having to be moved, but they will be resited, and they benefit from listed building consent for that. But in order to improve the safety of the area at night and so on, modern lighting has been designed to be placed in between to provide appropriate levels of lighting. And again, following previously approved sections of the seafront, these will comprise 7-metre lighting columns, both in metal and timber, and a set of 3- and 5-metre lighting columns. These, again, images of what the new lighting columns will look like. Moving on to street furniture. Again, continuing previous phases, street furniture has been designed and will be completed in materials that are resistant to the climate, the coastal conditions, but nothing new, nothing outwardly new proposed in terms of any different to previous sub-frontages. Again, some images there of proposed seating areas interspersed with planters and so on to provide an attractive environment for the users of the area. Again, details of the handrails down onto the beach to enable access by all. Moving on to condition 24, hard surfacing. You'll recall that the choice of materials for the hard surfacing has been the subject of extensive discussion with Historic England, certainly in relation to that section near Long Curtain Moat and Southsea Castle, where it was agreed that 2 different surface finishes would be used. In this case, given the lack of significant historic assets, the proposed finish is to be a sort of South Sea mix, if you like, to try and replicate the gravel on the beach. Yes, in a couple of slides' time, I'll have an image of that for you. So the promenade will be surfaced using that. The secondary defence walls will be in a smooth concrete. The cycle lane would be coloured tarmac to distinguish it from the roadway. The footpath would be smooth asphalt, and the highway replaced with repaired asphalt wherever necessary as part of the works. So the finish is proposed. It's the one on the right, that what I've described as the normal promenade is the one that will be predominantly used in this section. And that's just meant to show that how the applicants sought to mimic the shingle beach material in the new finish. Lastly, turning to condition 26, roads and footpaths, the highway layout remains as is. The minor amendments to curb alignments, drainage and so on, resurfacing, as I say, where necessary, and road markings replaced as necessary. And just to finish off, so the other conditions not underlined on my first slide are delegated to officers for decision. That completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. We have 2 deputations. The first is from Denise Perry. You have up to 6 minutes to say your deputation.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. So I'm a Southsea resident who lives near the seafront, and I campaign for the area by knocking on doors and speaking to residents. Most residents I have spoken to love the work at the seafront so far and think it's of a high quality, keeping both the historic element while adding new features like the Poet Laureate's Theatre of the Sea poem. However, I'd like the committee to consider the following. On condition 16, concerning soft landscaping, please consider that the planting on the terraces and planters are hardy enough to survive the conditions. This is to avoid replanting due to vandalism or unsuitable plants. And then on condition 24, concerning hard surfacing materials, as a cyclist, I'm pleased with the continuous cycle lane and distinctive coloured tarmac. However, to help avoid accidents, a clear and distinctive surface would be helpful. Possibly a different colour where pedestrians cross the cycle lanes to ensure both cyclists and pedestrians are aware of potential dangers. I myself have had an accident near Canoe Lake where I ran into a pedestrian and came off my bike because she was unaware of the cycle lane. Different colours would help reduce those risks. From my conversations with residents, I also think it would be helpful if the committee would give consideration to adequate bins, water for dog walkers, disabled access and needs of the sea swimmers. I'm confident that this work, along with the positive developments in the area, such as Hanley's Corner, which has already been spoken about, will help keep Southsea a special place. So I do support this in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Councillor Candlish, you are speaking.
I'm speaking today.
You're speaking.
I'm speaking today as local councillor for E&C and also as a local resident who's lucky enough to live directly opposite this work that is about to take place. And overall, I think the work to date on the sea defences has been great. It's another sort of legacy project that we are building here. Personally, I also think that the council has played a blinder in the way that it's taken the opportunity to add what could have been a fairly dull and functional set of sea defences with some extras like the windbreaks open air gallery near the Briney at Speaker's Corner, which is providing a fantastic rotating showcase for local artists and is already a visitor draw in the area. In 2 years' time, honestly, Southsea will have one of the finest proms in Europe, I believe. However, I'm speaking today on behalf of two groups of local residents who I think can still be better made through the scheme. And these are, firstly, residents with mobility problems, and secondly, sea swimmers. The first group includes all those who can struggle to reach the heart of the beach, especially now that it is doubled in size. As our society is ageing, more and more people need easy access to the beach, including a lot of people with or want access to the beach, including people with wheelchairs. Disability groups and carers who have to push wheelchairs have contacted me asking about the ramps and the slopes in the projects and asking for them to be made less steep, and that ways are found to give access into the heart of the beach. And today's discussion needs to think about those needs very carefully. I noted in the presentation, I think it was slide 14, where there was a close-up of the ramp which goes from the prom into the beach. You can see very clearly the steepness of that ramp. And perhaps it is within technical guidance, but I believe a shallower one would be very advantageous for such groups. Imagine pushing a wheelchair from a pebbled beach uphill on a ramp to try and regain access to the prom. The second group of sea swimmers. Now, generally, these are a fairly hardy and independent bunch. They don't ask for very much more than clean water. Hello, Southern Water. But today, we need to talk about some basic facilities that will be really helpful for them. These would simply include good access to cold water for a wash or a shower post-swim, a shelter from the wind, and potentially some modest lockers that they could use to lock valuables in while they were at the beach. And I know some of these are strictly outside of the scope of this project, but they are very adjacent to, and some thought in the final execution of the project that is covered here would facilitate some of those things to be done perhaps through other means. I have frankly been amazed at how many people swim off the beach all year round and report massive mental health benefits from doing so. And the sort of facilities that would benefit them on a cold winter's day would also be helpful for the thousands of visitors who go down to this area in the summer. So as one of the local councillors, I really hope these needs can be built into the project. Today's discussion is actually about what matters to most people most of the time. It's about that visible skin of the promenade which people interact with. So I'm really focused on those ramps, but there are some other things I would like the committee to think about. And please keep the needs of those two groups in your mind as you review this project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your deputation. So over to members for questions initially. Councillor Hunt.
So both Councillor Candlish and Denise Perry have asked us about the swimmers, cold water swimmers, and particularly have asked about shelters and lockers, shelters, lockers, and a bit of protection or something. Yes, sorry?
Cold water.
Cold water. Thank you very much indeed. I couldn't read my own writing. Can anything be done at all within this, within what was being done right now to accommodate this? Or do you know if there's anything being brought forward, Ed?
Councillor, thank you for your question. I don't know of anything being brought forward, but the applicants are in the room today, and I'm sure they have heard your Councillor Candlish's concerns, and maybe this is something that we can discuss with them outside of this meeting.
Yeah, so you've made a note, presumably, and they've made a note, I hope. Yes, they have. Well done. And let's see if we can't do something about that. The other question I have is, does CIO money come out of this or not?
This is not eligible for SIL, no.
Just for clarification on the back of Councillor Hunt's question, because that was going to be mine, those things have been spoken about. None of them are mentioned in here. Just for advice for the committee, we can talk about those things, but we are making a decision based on what we've got in front of us, which doesn't include them.
Absolutely. You'll make a decision on what's in front of you, Councillor, but...
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
Can we recommend a condition asking for those things? I'm a pretty frequent sea swimmer, and I think, you know, the shower, not sure about the lockers because they get very scruffy, but certainly access, easier access down ramps would be better, would be good. Can we put a condition in that would allow that to be considered by officers? And
My feeling is that we're varying already conditions. We're not giving planning permission, so I'm assuming that we can't add a condition. We can just. Is that what you're going to advise me?
You're beating me to it. And, I'm going to take you on as a planning officer, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're actually, today what we're doing is we're looking at officers' recommendations about the variations of previous conditions in the planning application. So therefore, I think the best we can do is to vociferously give our support to the two deputies. Okay, any more questions? Councillor Hunt, and the question?
I don't know, because but can we put an informative on it rather than a condition, you know, to just make sure we've captured what we've talked about?
no is the short answer. You've granted planning permission. This is quite an unusual process. In 30 years, I've never known a planning committee agree discharging conditions. Yeah, all we're doing is agreeing the details of conditions that have already been imposed by the committee. So we're not issuing another decision in that regard. But clearly, the comments are noted.
Okay, before I go on to general comments, on that point, I think it's worthwhile just reminding why the planning committee want to bring these conditions and discussions to this committee is to have a platform to be able to celebrate the way the planning permission is being executed and the popularity of the attention to detail around these conditions that we're looking at. So that's why I think the predominant reason why it comes back. Any other comments from anyone? Yes, I'm on to comments now. That was my first comment. Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Smythe.
Yeah. All right then. It's just to say again, once again, thank you to the applicant, thank you to the officers again who are having a lovely day so far. For all the hard work, and you're right, the reason we asked a long time ago, Mr. Hodges, before you were here, several planning officers back, to bring this back regularly, for the sorts of reasons we're doing today, keeping an eye on it, I suppose, and working as a team and keeping involved. Of course, the sea defences we've seen already have done their job this winter, protecting the coast road and the buildings and the premises. If it hadn't been for what they'd done, a lot of damage would have been done to the common from a storm recently. And I know that the South Sea Coastal Partnership, they went online and were reassuring people over that over the last few weeks. So once again, it's all congratulations today. It's all good news. So thank you to the partnership. Thank you to the officers. Thank you to the councillors for keeping on top of this. And thank you to Mr. Candlish and Ms. Perry for coming along and talking to us about the sea swimmers and the need for this additional facility, which we wouldn't really have been able to talk much about unless, of course, in the first place, we'd not been having this come back to us from time to time, according to which section is being looked at.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe was next, and then Councillor Mason. Were you proposing to move?
I beg your pardon, yes, of course.
Yes.
I'm happy to second. I don't mind, I don't need to speak.
Okay. Councillor Vallely, we'll put that in there. Oh, Councillor Mason.
I think most have been said, but it is, I think, important that we, as this is an ongoing process over a number of years, that the planning committee should approve these details as they are brought forward, because we've approved the overall scheme, but the detail is something which I think it is right that this committee should look at. And so I'm very happy to, in this case, to approve the recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the main theme, isn't it? That it's an engineering project primarily, but actually what most people are interested in is what it looks like. And actually those two things can happen at the same time. So, Councillor Atwell, did you want to say something?
This is completely unnecessary, but just to build on that, it's disappointing to learn that other planning committees aren't as thorough. Or, so, well done us.
Thank you, that's a good point. Okay.
To be fair, Chair, when we made the agreement to bring back details, for which we're very grateful, we had no idea how good it was going to be, and we would not have known, and we would not have been able to control details, and we could be in a different position. So thank you to all.
That's a good point.
And it is very.
So it might be brilliant because we're bringing them back here, or it might be we could go around in circles. But anyway, lots of congratulations around. So we have a proposal in front of us by Councillor Hunt, seconded, I think, by Councillor Vallely in the end, but to move officers' recommendations about the variations of the various conditions from the previous planning application. I think we know where we're at. All those in favour? Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's unanimous again. 9. So therefore, that is approved. Thank you very much. Should we just push on? So the next item is item 7, which is 82 Drayton Lane, which road, sorry, not lane, road. Yes, item 7. And so I think it's David who's presenting this one. We'll let you switch seats. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I should have said that. If you've done your bit, you don't have to stay to the end.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this application is at 82 Drayton Road, not Drayton Lane. So the change of use from dwelling house in Class C3 to a 7-person, 7-bedroom HMO. So property, you can see on the Ordnance Survey plan and the aerial view there, mid-terrace property. And also just you can see on this plan, let me just get the cursor up, there we go. You'll see there's a rear access lane. Just to highlight a couple of things from this SMAT, we've received amended plans which clarified an error on the plans. There was a missing window. And also in the SMAT, you'll see that the applicant has provided evidence to us which just confirms that they do have a right-of-way over this rear access. So here's the property here, a mid-terrace property, suggests it's slightly later than the Victorian properties nearby. In terms of your mix and balance communities, so we've assessed the existing records for HMOs in the surrounding 50-metre radius. We've identified 1 property, so this would bring it to 2. And as 268 properties in the area, that would be a percentage of 1.47, so well below the 10% threshold in the adopted SBD. There's alterations proposed to the property, but just to confirm, as what we're considering is purely the change of use of the property, and the external alterations, so the loft conversion and the rear extension shown here are permitted development, and also the internal alterations, which you'll see in a cross-section later, are not development. So we are purely considering the change of use of the property from C3 to the Sojourners HMO. What does that mean in terms of the layout? So you'll see in this particular case we have 2 ensuite rooms, sorry, not 2 ensuite rooms. We have an ensuite room at ground floor, separate bathrooms and utilities. Sorry, it is an ensuite room number 2, just the angle I'm looking at. So 2 ensuite rooms on the ground floor, communal kitchen diner. The property is slightly different to many of the ones that you see, which have an L-shaped Victorian footprint. So this has a larger span, a deeper span. But we've checked those widths in terms of the rooms, and they're compliant, and we're satisfied with that layout and amenity for an occupier. Moving up to first floor, so you see 3 further ensuite rooms, and then in the loft conversion, in the loft, again, a further 2 ensuite rooms. In terms of the layout, so this is the amended plan that we've received. So bins stored in the front forecourt as existing. The rear extension indicated there. And then the intention of the applicant is to remove part of the rear building, create an access onto the rear lane, which they've indicated they have a right-of-way, and that will give rear access to the proposed bike store at the bottom of the garden. And as you can see, there will be a reasonable external space for occupiers as well. This cross-section just to show how the building would be arranged and how the ceiling heights can be achieved. And finally, just some photos of the existing property, which you can see is in need of renovation. So, Chair, bringing all those matters together, the application complies with your policies and adopted guidance on new HMOs in the city, and therefore we recommend the application for approval.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And we now go over to deputations. The first deputation is from Tom Vale in support of the application. You have up to 6 minutes, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, members and Chair. I'm the owner of Crocker Hill Properties, which owns 82 Drayton Road, and I'm asking you to support the officer recommendation and approve this 7-bedroom HMO. The case officer's report is, as always, professional, thorough, and shows there is no planning reasons for refusal. I have made a point of introducing myself to both our neighbours and have had conversations with them on their concerns. And I'm pleased to say we have agreed the necessary party wall matters, and we're committed to maintaining that constructive relationship during and after the works. A concern that has also been raised, which I think was alluded to, is over rights of access. Our land registry title, just to be clear, has included an express right of way over this access since February 1960, so the use of the driveway for access has been lawful and established for more than 60 years. Your policies are clear. PCS 20 and the HMO SPD do define a mix and balance community using a 10% threshold, as we all know, and that was shown on the slides earlier, and we are under the well under that, and under even the 5% that was alluded to in some of the objections. Some of the objections effectively argue for no more HMOs or no loss of family homes. That's not your policy, refusing a compliant HMO simply because it replaces a C3 dwelling would be to depart from the adopted framework. Concerns about room sizes, light and licensing have been independently checked, as the officer mentioned, and found compliant. Every bedroom exceeds the minimum and the communal space exceeds your standards for 7 people. All habitable rooms have good outlook and daylight, and bedroom 2 is no exception. Ed, I wonder if I could put the floor plans back on, if I may. Bedroom 2, which is actually just behind the HDMI sign there, has a fully glazed external door and main opening window and a vent window. It comfortably meets your requirement for adequate natural light and ventilation, as shown in these plans. On escape, it is not, as some suggested, an inner room off a kitchen. The plans show a direct route to the rear garden and clear exit via the shared driveway, and the outbuilding footprint, was reduced specifically to keep that route open. Fire safety has been integral to, and from the outset, to our designs, with the building control plans approval certificate already in place, and alarm systems providing a high quality standard of detection and early warning. I also want to be clear about who this HMO is for. The intention is to let the rooms to young professionals, a demographic facing, as we all know, a recognised and acute shortage of good quality accommodation and affordable shared housing in the city. I'll now pass over to Peter, who is also a shareholder in Crocker Hill. Thank you, Chair, members.
Thank you. As he said, my name is Peter, and I am a shareholder in Crocker Hill Properties, the owner of Drayton Road, and I'm responsible for property management. While the management of the property is not part of this committee's review, it is important to inform you that I am an accredited landlord under the National Residential Landlord Association. I mention this as evidence of our professional approach to managing the property once it's complete. Several objections rest on a general dislike of HMOs and on the predictions of antisocial behaviour, including statements that serious incidents are a question of when, not if. Your HMO SPD and the officer report explain that amenity issues arise in areas of high HMO concentration, which is why you have the 10% threshold and clustering tests. In this case, you are well below that threshold, and the report concludes that one additional HMO here will not cause demonstrable harm to neighbour amenity, and that the overall level of activity will be comparable to that of a large family household. Behavioural issues are dealt with through tenancy management, licensing conditions, and, where needed, the police. The question is whether this use in this location causes planning harm under PCS 20, PCS 23, and the HMO SPD. Your professional advice is that it does not. On parking, the difference between the standard for this HMO and for a typical family dwelling is half a space, and the report confirms that the site clearly qualifies as high accessibility under the parking standards SPD because of its proximity to London Road, frequent buses and rail connections. Your highways team raises no objection, and the officer highlights the inspector's findings at 36 Chichester Road, where an almost identical parking situation for a HMO was found not to justify refusal because the demand was unlikely to exceed that of a large family, and there was no highway objection. On cycle storage, the expectation is secure, covered provision for 4 bicycles, and a condition is already proposed, which we welcome. We are not looking to install a token store that nobody uses. Our intention is to work with the officers at the detailed stage and to learn from other HMO owners so that the final solution meets your policy, is convenient to use, and genuinely supports sustainable travel rather than pushing everything back onto cars.
Can you begin to wind up now
Sure.
within your 6 minutes? Thank you.
This proposal makes efficient use of an existing building in a highly sustainable urban location to provide much needed shared accommodation, and it passes every relevant test in PCS 20, PCS 23, the HMO SPD, the parking SPD, and emerging local plan policies. In light of that, we ask you to give appropriate weight to your officer's professional assessments and grant permission in line with the recommendation before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've got to do a deputation Councillor Jason Fazakerley here, but I haven't seen him. I'm assuming he's not coming. Have we heard anything? No. In which case, I'll go to Councillor Richard Adair. Thank you so much for staying so long during this meeting to do your deputation. You're the last person doing a deputation today.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Sorry, so as I said in my last deputation several weeks ago, it is all too easy to express what you as a councillor think is best for residents. This is, of course, an entirely incorrect view to hold. So in order to avoid this, I knocked on 6 doors to obtain the opinions of residents who will be affected by this application. The residents I spoke to are likely to be directly and indirectly affected, i.e. the residents either side of number 82 and those residents at the back of the alleyway shared by residents of Drayton Road and Beresford Road. Residents expressed serious concerns over the proposal, and I'm sure that the committee has heard the usual suspects many, many times before, and they range, of course, from a loss of a family home, fear of antisocial behaviour, overdevelopment of the site, and the pressure this will place on local services, i.e. dentists and GPs. It will, of course, come as no surprise that the overwhelming concern was over parking. This is certainly not a trivial concern, as parking is a highly competitive matter, particularly in the evenings in this area. My personal experience confirms this. I went to visit the people around about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I spent over 20 minutes driving aimlessly around until I found a suitable parking space, which then involved quite a few minutes of walking. Obviously, with this new development, there were clearly concerns raised that a further 7 vehicles and visitors to the property raised more problems over parking. I'm a strong believer in giving praise where it is deserved. As you have heard in his deputation, Mr Vale has taken the time to personally visit the occupants of number 80 and 84. And I can say that the visit was extremely reassuring, and it helped to allay their concerns. The residents were given details of the proposed work, including soundproofing, and the tenants they hope to attract. I of course hope that this is a genuine expression of goodwill and provide the basis for a mutual trust. Due to the positive feedback I have received, I suggest it might be adopted as a policy for future developments. One very heartfelt request was made by all residents I've spoken to, and it concerns the alleyway at the back of Drayton and Beresford. The alleyway has a number of garages and is used by residents who park there due to the problems of parking on the road. Residents were very concerned that if permission is granted, the alleyway will be used as a storage area for bricks, sand, skips, builders' vehicles and contractors' vehicles. They fear that the alleyway will become so congested that they will not be able to use it. I ask that, if possible, this committee place a condition or an informative that during the time of the works, the alleyway is kept clear so that residents can properly use it. Members, despite the reassurances given by the developer, the greater reassurance to the residents would be a refusal of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that deputation. Okay, so members, I'm going to jump in with a quick question. Can we look at the floor plan again? That's the next one. Yeah. Can we look at the floor plan again? I think, David, you were saying that the room 2 has an ensuite. But is it not the case? It's not going to particularly affect my views, but it was just clarification. It looks like there's a hallway there with the door opening from... Am I interpreting this wrong? It looks to me like it's got 2... No, I think one is a shower, like the little cheese thing, like on Trivial Pursuits. That's what I was thinking. But there's a door into the loo. But then it says hall, I think. And then, is that the entrance to the bedroom 2? In which case, the door from the communal looks like it would go to the bathroom. I suppose what I'm trying to clarify is, I always try and think what it would be like to live in one of these houses. And if you're downstairs in the kitchen cooking, and you want to go to the loo, if both of those are en suite, then you'd need to go up to your room or whatever to go to the loo. So it looks to me like it's designed that it's not en suite, but obviously the person in room 2 would be nearest to it. Is that true? Am I interpreting that wrong?
So the plans are actually showing 2 doors, Chair. So it's showing a door there.
Yeah.
It's actually showing a door there. So, because it's then opening inwards. Sorry, I'll try not to do
I see
wobbling
now.
the cursor too much, but it's showing that door opening inwards. So I would interpret then that is an ensuite for
that
2.
room. There's no door to that room.
I'm not sure. I couldn't
see.
answer why the lobby needs to be there, but it is. But in terms of your question about if someone is downstairs cooking tea, they can use the toilet in the utilities.
Yeah, no, I misinterpreted the door sign. But thank you. No, you're right.
I'm
you're
not
right.
surprised there's a number of doors
There's
in
so
there.
many doors.
Possibly
1,
one more than is needed.
2,
but,
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4, 5. I've got it now. Thanks, that's my question answered. Now, I don't know whether it's Councillor Mason or Councillor... Okay, Councillor Smythe.
Just very quickly, I was going to raise a similar question. It looks like too many doors there. But isn't it a case that building regulations require 2 doors between any kitchen and any lavatory? And the room below that, I love utility rooms, I'm all in favour with it. Machines get out of the kitchen, all that sort of thing. But I am not sure that building regulations would allow a lavatory letting directly onto the cooking area.
Yeah. Is that the case?
So I'm not a
Building
building
regs.
regulations surveyor, Chair. That's a matter that they'll need to deal with the when they get to the building regulations stage, if there's a potential issue or conflict there. But again, coming back to the fundamental point, it's all internal alterations which don't require planning permission.
Okay, so can you very quickly just clarify?
Yes, Chair, sorry. We have our building regulations certificate.
Okay, thank you. That's all we need to know. Councillor Mason.
Nevertheless, would you want to have a lavatory letting directly onto your kitchen?
Mason.
Yes, it is, again, on that bathroom on the ground floor. Is that included in the 27 square metres of combined living space, or is it separate? And if it is included in the combined living space, what is the combined living space without that bathroom and toilet on the ground floor?
I just need to check that, Chair, but 2 seconds and I'll come back to you on that. No, that's fine. I just needed to blow up the part of the plan so I could understand it. No, the short answer is if we can go back to the floor plan. Sorry, I keep just writing sunshine here. So the 27 square metres is this space here, and does not include the utility area as well. So that would be in addition to the 27 square metres. So it meets a standard because it's above the 22.5 square metres.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Can I ask for advice, please? I mean, if the developers decide they want to use the land, the alleyway, and the land at the back in order to store sand, bricks, whatever, they may have no intention of doing that, I don't know. But if they decide they want to do that and put all their spoils out on there rather than the road, is there anything we can do about that? Can we put an informative on there saying that if they're going to do that, they've got to notify us, let us know about it? So can we get an informative on there? Is that useful?
I don't think that would serve a planning purpose because there's a couple of things in that. Firstly, what we've been provided with is that they only have a right of way, a right of access over that. So I think that's unlikely that that includes obstructing it. So I suspect that then becomes a private matter between those who do have a right of way over the rear access if it's obstructed. We could put an informative note on the permission, but it has no teeth. And if the rear access was being obstructed by builders' materials, we wouldn't have any power to go in and shift those anyway. So it would be a private matter.
Any more questions, members? Okay, in which case, if there's no questions, any comments, Councillor Mason.
Recommendation, I would recommend the officer's recommendation because this is one of the best laid out HMOs I have seen for a very long time, and I'm also very pleased to see that there is a separate utility space from the combined living space. So often these things are merged together. This looks like a very good transition to an HMO, and so I propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Atwell.
With respect to the second deputy, this application doesn't pass all SPDs and guidance. It's just a matter of fact that it doesn't meet Portsmouth City Council's parking standards. I don't want to keep going over and over and over and over it, but it's just a matter of fact that it doesn't meet our standards.
I put myself in the queue, so I'm going to go in. I'm sorry, Councillor Hunt. And I am going to second Councillor Mason's proposal. Not only do I think it is a really clear case that complies with our policies, but actually it's the first time in ages that we've actually seen rear access to a cycle storage, which, as you know, because I've mentioned several times before, is I like to think of the practicalities, and some of the applications, whilst they tick that box, you know, it would take a very nimble person to get some of the bikes through to the storage. So I actually think it's very welcome to see that. So I will second that, but we have other people who want to speak. Councillor Hunt wants to speak.
Yes, I will second Councillor Atwell's proposal. Councillor Adair provided very strong evidence, only from last night, and from the residents in the area, their concern about parking, and indeed all those other matters that he raised. So, and I also note the generosity that the applicant has made by going around visiting people in the area, and that can only be a good thing, and let's hope for a good relationship and trust building, as Councillor Adair said.
Anyone else want to say? Oh, Councillor Atwell.
I didn't go quite as far as proposing.
Okay.
But Billy, if you feel you're able to.
You're proposing? So we shifted. So yours was just a comment. You're now proposing refusal. Beg your pardon, Councillor Atwell, I missed that. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes, I'd second that.
Councillor Cordy. Okay. So I'm sure I'll get advice if I'm doing this in the wrong way, but I understand that we've got a proposal before us to move officers' recommendations for conditional permission, proposed by Councillor Mason, seconded by myself, so that we go to a vote on that first. Okay, so all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that motion is carried, and conditional permission is therefore granted. Thank you. Thank you for waiting as well, for the people doing the deputations, including Councillor Adair.
I've been looking at, we have to go because we have care paid for up to 2 o'clock. We thought that's probably where it would end, so we need to leave now and take over the care of our mother.
Thank you very much for coming along, and we'll note that you are leaving the committee now. Thank you, Councillor
Much obliged.
Hunt.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Members, do we need a comfort break, or do we want to just plough on through? Yeah, quick one, 5 minutes. We'll go, and we'll come back. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much. We've got the last 3 items to go. So we're on item 8 now, which is 14 Burlington Road. And I think it's David who's presenting this one. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yes, it's an application at 14 Burlington Road for the change of use of the existing Class C3 dwelling house to a 7-person, 7-bed HMO. So here you can see the location of the site here, mid-terrace property on Burlington Road, and the, let me just get the cursor up, there we go, and then the arrow pointing to the aerial view of the property. So here you can see the property here, mid-terrace, typical of the housing stock in the area. So in terms of your policy and SPD on HMOs and a mixed and balanced community, you can see that we've investigated the existing HMOs within a 50-metre radius of the site and identified 5 current HMOs that you can see with the red stars there. So if this application were approved, that would bring the total to 6 out of the 86 properties in the area, so an overall percentage of 5.81, below your 10% threshold. Again, the property, the application is purely for the change of use of the property, and you can see there will be a number of alterations, external and internal, that would be carried out. These are permitted development, so in this case, the loft conversion, you can see there, a rear single-storey extension, and then a minor extension to the side, just filling in where there's an odd part of the current floor plan which steps in, just to straighten out that part of the building. In terms of what that means for the layout, so go on the ground floor, there's 2 bedrooms, one of which is en suite. I was obviously confusing myself on the previous scheme, so 2 is an ensuite room, 1 is not. And then the communal kitchen dining area to the rear. Moving up to the first floor, so there's 3 bedrooms at first floor, and these are shared separate bathrooms. So this is separate shared toilet and then a separate shared bathroom. And then up the first floor level in the loft conversion, again, it's a shared, cursor's gone, shared shower room, bathroom there, and then an ensuite for room number 6. Just in terms of the layout, so bins stored in the existing forecourt as existing. You see the rear extension indicated there, and then bicycle store to the rear. No rear access in this scenario, but also space left over for rear amenity for the occupiers, as well as access to that proposed cycle store. Cross-section here just to show how the ceiling heights will be retained, provided internally with the changes to the building. And just some photos finally of the existing property. Let's go back to the floor plans. So, Chair, having assessed it against our standards and policies in the SPD and the local plan, we're satisfied it complies, and therefore we are recommending the application for approval.
Thank you very much. We did have one deputation down, which was Councillor Raymond Dent. Unfortunately, he's had to go. I don't think he quite thought that the meeting would go on this long. So I hope members will agree that it's okay for Jane to read out a few comments that he would have made if he'd been able to stay. I think that's fair. So it's not Jane's deputation. It's just some points he wanted to raise. Thank you, Jane.
Exactly. Thank you. On behalf of Councillor Dent. It's 3 HMOs in the space of 6 houses. Parking is poor at best, with many disabled bays in the road. One of the objectors lives in this property. Does that mean they will be evicted to make way for this HMO? Having looked at the web, there are loads, hundreds, if not thousands, of empty HMO rooms in Portsmouth. Do we need any more to replace the family house?
Thank you very much for those points. I'm sure they will be noted. Okay, so it's over to members. First of all, could we have any questions for officers? No. Questions? Okay, in which case, do we have any comments or proposals? This is in stunned silence. Wow. Councillor Smythe? Go on. No, go on, put it on for you. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. You need to put it on.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please.
Okay. Are there any comments about that or alternative comments? Yes, Councillor Atwell.
Well, I don't want to go over my previous point that this doesn't meet the parking standard. I understand that moving a motion is not going to fly, so I shall be moving a motion, but I also shall not be supporting the proposal to accept this application.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Okay, in which case we've got one proposal in front of us, which is to move officers' recommendations around conditional permission. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? 1, 2, 3. In which case that's carried and conditional permission is granted. Thank you very much. Okay. We've got 2 more left. So we're on to agenda item 9, which is 2A Tarleton Road. And it's David again, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is a householder application, as you said, at 2A Tarleton Road. The application comes to you purely because the applicant's spouse is a member of staff, and under the scheme of delegation, that particular criteria, we're unable to delegate the decision to officers. Properties up in Paulsgrove, and originally the properties were a pair of semi-detached houses. What you can see in this aerial view is since then 2A has been built to the southwest, and then actually you can see in this aerial view under construction another property has been built to the northeast. So it's now a terrace of 4, which has made use of some land within the urban area to effectively provide some more properties. Apologies for the computer, I'll try and silence it in a minute. So the proposal is for, and then you can see the existing elevations of the property. So whilst it's a new property, it's been built very much to match its adjacent neighbours. And here is the existing floor plan, which is again typical of its adjoining neighbours as a 3-bed end of terrace. So the proposal is to build this single-storey rear extension here. This will have a flat roof with large lanterns on there. No alterations at first floor, but you'll see from the proposed elevations, originally the application came to us with a front dormer on. We weren't satisfied that would be suitably in keeping with the character and appearance of the area, so that's been omitted. The rear dormer is permitted development. It's been shown on the plans for just for completeness, but that can be constructed anyway, and we're solely considering the rear extension here. So just to show you what that would look like in context, you can see that number 2 adjacent has a rear conservatory. It does have some clear glazing on the side, which in effect looks straight down into the adjacent property. So the proposed extension will sit across that, so there will be an impact to that neighbouring property in terms of that south elevation. However, you'll be able to see, and this is where there's a better view here, so the proposed extension will sit across here, coming out with a flat roof. So we acknowledge and accept there's an impact in terms of the adjacent property. However, that property will retain its view down the garden unimpeded, with privacy and aspect and outlook and light it's coming from the east there. So we're satisfied that whilst there's an impact, it's an acceptable impact overall, and that the scheme can be recommended for approval. Just some extra views to show you relationships of the properties to the south and then beyond to the rear. But Chair, as I say, this is only coming to it because of the relationship of the applicant to a member of staff. Otherwise, we would have determined the application in the delegated authority. We're satisfied with the details of the application and happy to recommend it for approval.
Thank you. And there's no deputations on this. I just have a quick clarification question that the neighbour has not objected and was definitely aware of this planning application.
Chair, just let me double check the report for, yes, so no representations, and yes, under our statement of community involvement, we would have sent letters to the directly adjoining properties.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor.
Just in line of your question, because I'm not sure if the neighbours were informed. Were they informed before?
I was just double checking because I didn't think there were any objections, but there would be, I think there's standard communication, as we all probably know, where we put things through people's letterboxes. They then might say that they never received them. So I guess you can't guarantee 100%, but there will have been the usual, presumably, board out on the street, plus a letter to neighbours. I'm assuming as long as we stick with our policy around engagement, you can't guarantee that every single person would know. But can I be, is that correct, or are you going to update me?
Yes. So statutorily, we're required either to put a site notice up on or near the site or to send letters to adjacent properties. So under our statement of community involvement, we commit to sending letters unless it's hugely impractical, like a large tower block of flats. So yes, in this scenario, we would have sent letters to adjacent properties. You are absolutely right. We can know that we sent the letter out of the system and out the door from the office. We can't 100% guarantee that the post office pushed it through the door or that the person opened it and read it and understood. So that is always an issue. Does occasionally come up with complaints with people claiming they didn't receive it, and ultimately we can't prove they did, and we can't prove we didn't.
Are there any other questions? Comments, recommendations? Counts. Why do I keep forgetting? Oh no, Stan. Stan.
It's all right. Yeah, as long as we can confirm that this has got a letter through the neighbour's door, then I'd be happy to go with the officer's recommendations and propose we approve this.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Chair. Just for my colleague has confirmed that a letter was sent to the adjacent property. So
Okay. So you're proposing it, Councillor Salish. That's good.
Second.
Councillor So, any other comments? No? So we'll go straight to a vote then. So we have a proposal from Councillor Salish, seconded by Councillor Derrida, to move officers' recommendations for conditional permission. All those in favour? Straightforward, unanimous. 8. And we will move on to swiftly move on to the last item, Agenda item 10, which is 6 South Road, and I believe it's Simon who's presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. Application at 6 South Road for the construction of a single-storey rear extension following removal of the existing. Just like the previous one, this is only coming to the Planning Committee because the applicant is married to a member of staff at the City Council. There were no objections to this application. So we're up there in Drayton and Farlington ward, just close to the Havant Road. It's a pair of semi-detached bungalows. If we go on to the next image. Thank you, David. So the top right elevation, you can see the original dwelling house with a pitched roof, and then it's been extended to the rear once or twice with a flat roof, single-story extension and conservatory. So the conservatory would be removed and replaced, which we'll see in the next image. Oh no, this is a floor plan. So you can see the rear extension and then the rear conservatory. So the conservatory will be whipped off and a new brick-built extension go on there, extend another 1.25 metres deeper into the garden, longer than the conservatory. But the next image shows us, there it is, being single-storey and not tall and sited off the boundaries, as you can see, almost no impact on the neighbours peeking over the fence there. So we're happy to recommend that for approval. Just the top two images there. So the right-hand one is showing the neighbour to the south, sorry, the north, and the left-hand image is showing the neighbour to the south. Again, you can see the gaps there and make a judgment on the effect of a similar sized, or at least height extension, albeit extending another 1.25 metres down the garden. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Any questions, first of all? Question? Yeah.
For the point of view of the public, could I ask the question of why this isn't permitted development, please?
Because of the spouse being an employee, I think.
Because it's already been extended quite deep with that first bit and then the conservatory, so it's more than the 4 metres that would have been permitted development.
Thank you. I think it's useful for the public to be reminded what permitted development is. Thank you.
Good point. Any other questions? Any comments, proposals? Councillor Atwell. Councillor Atwell.
Happy to move the officers'
Recommendations. And so we have a proposal from Councillor Atwell, seconded by Councillor Valley, to move officers' recommendations for conditional permission. Is it? Yeah, conditional permission. All those in favour? Unanimous again. That's 8. And that's it. Just in case anyone didn't pick up, the reason we've gone from 9 to 8 is because Councillor Hunt had to go for personal reasons. Okay, so that, I believe, brings us to the end of the meeting. We don't have any additional items today. Thank you so much for the questions, comments, and for this meeting. And see you next time.